Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 16 of What If the Transformers Crash Landed in Code Geass. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Damocles rises. Sometime after returning from the Geass Order, after sharing an emotional reunion with his wife, Shirley had taken her father to her own personal room to meet someone who was equally special in her heart. But the person in question was somebody that he never expected to see, one of the people that he and the rest of Code R had conducted experiments on, and now that same young man was sitting next to his daughter and holding her hand. Rai and Shirley had told Joseph everything that had happened to him, how he was an illegitimate prince of Britannia and later a contractor to VV, as well as what happened to his home and being sealed away in the thought elevator, his bout of amnesia and being discovered by the Ashford Student Council and both his and Shirley's joining of the Black Knights. Needless to say, it was quite a few overwhelming hours for the man, but Shirley felt he had to know everything. "Dad," Shirley got his attention. "Are you still there?" "Yeah, it's just a lot to take in, sweetie." Joseph replied. "I don't blame you," Shirley said to him. He looked to the young man who gazed at him with curiosity, when Joseph had expected him to look at in hatred. "Rai, is it, what you went through? All of it, at VV's hands and mine, I'm sorry. Why did you do it?" Rai asked. "Why work for Code R?" Joseph sighed before explaining. "I was scouted out by General Bartley for my work, and that's how I met Prince Clovis who told me of all this Geass stuff." "Did you know what you'd be doing?" Shirley asked. "Not at first," Joseph confessed, looking down in shame. "But if I did, I would have rejected it. I thought, it'd be a good way to make some extra money if the Viceroy of Area 11 was in charge, I'd better provide for my family. But, once I saw what we were doing, I felt I couldn't get out of it. They didn't say anything but, I feared that if I tried to leave, they would come after you and your mother, Shirley." "I'm sorry." Shirley sighed before speaking to her father seriously. "It's in the past, Dad. We can't change it, no matter how much we want. But we can learn from it and use it to make ourselves stronger and to be better people. That's one of the things I've learned since joining the Black Knights and helping the Autobots. Everything we've been through together, good and bad, it's made us stronger. And I wouldn't change it for anything." Joseph looked at his daughter, and although her face was the same, her eyes were very different. In them carried a strong fire that he'd never expect to see from his own daughter. Here, he didn't see a schoolgirl, he saw a warrior. He knew he couldn't stop her from being part of this revolution, so he wouldn't try. A sad smile formed on his face. "You've grown up so much," that caused Shirley to smile as tears formed in her eyes before moving forward to hug him, and he didn't hesitate to return it. "Do you remember what you said to me when I was a little girl?" Shirley asked. "When I said I wanted to marry you, and that one day I'd find someone I'd really love. Well, I found him." "I remember," Joseph said as he let go of her before looking towards Rai. "I know I said this before, but I'm so sorry for what I did to you." "I get it. You already explained it," Rai replied. "Don't worry, there are quite a few I hold a grudge to, but you're not one of them. Thank you, and thank you for being the man to reach my daughter's heart." Joseph put a hand on the young man's shoulder. "I can see in your eyes how much you care for her, and I wish you both nothing but happiness." Rai smiled. "Thanks." Shirley's smile only brightened as she saw her father and boyfriend reach out to each other like this. But she still had something to say. "Dad, there's someone else you owe an apology to. Sarah has amnesia right now, but when she does remember, I don't think she'll hold anything against you, but I understand and I'll talk to her." Joseph responded with a nod and assuring smile. "When you feel she's ready, of course." Present day. Shirley continued to sit on the couch in Lelouch's personal room, looking over the amnesiac Sarah as she played with Arthur and Eliza. It was honestly one of the most adorable things she's seen in her life. She'd hoped that when this war was over, they could have more moments just like this. "Oh, I can see that deep in thought, look," Millie teased, leaning over the couch and directly in front of Shirley's face. "It must be hard, knowing the love of your life is about to go to war. And as usual, you're being overly dramatic for the sake of drama itself, Millie." Shirley interrupted. "Ouch, now that's pretty savage." Millie replied. Kinda a bit like RC and Colin mixed in. What do you expect when we always hang out with them? Shirley replied with a smirk. Rivals gave an audible groan as he sat down next to them. It just kinda sucks that we don't at least get to see them do what they do best and wipe con ass. I'm sure, but I will admit, I'm a bit worried. Millie admitted, drawing her friend's attention. We thought Megatron was gone, but we saw him come back. Plus, he still has that knockoff Star Saber and, she sat down with a look of uncertainty. It just feels like, after we've done or been through together, we're now at a point where it can go either way. Whether it all leads to a victory, or it was all for nothing. Shirley then spoke. I'm nervous too. But, I also have faith. I have faith in not only Rai, but in Optimus Prime, in Zero, in Bumblebee, in Colin, in RC, in Suzaku, in all of them. I have faith that no matter what darkness they face, they'll find a way to break through and reach the light at the end of this twisted tunnel we've been going through. We'll make it through this. I know it. Rivals smirked. Damn Shirley, you kinda sounded like Optimus there. All inspiring and everything. What can I say? He's a great role model. Shirley smiled. Well then, let's wish them all the best of luck. Millie declared as she grasped Shirley's right hand, while Shirley used her left to grasp Rivals's. Hey Sarah, come over here for a second. The amnesiac women slowly approached them. Yes. Millie reached out with her free hand. Come and join us. Let's wish all our friends the best of luck. Sarah wasn't quite sure what this gesture meant, but seeing their smiling faces seemed enough to convince her to so. She slowly reached out to grasp Millie's hand and sat down with them. They were soon joined by Arthur and Eliza as the cats curled up in chairs and Shirley's laps respectively. Megatron lives, Schneisel commented as he and Starscream spoke privately with each other within the Energon vault. I tried to tell you. The head of the Seekers said. More than likely it was that blasted Soundwave, and Shockwave probably had a hand in it as well. Those two follow him, as you humans say, like lovesick puppies. Their loyalty though is commendable. Schneisel admitted. Still, perhaps we need not change the plan. In fact, we may be able to eliminate him entirely along with Prime and Lelouch in one fell swoop. After all, with the Autobots and Black Knights solely focused on Megatron, that'll prompt many of his most loyal followers to come to his side and fight beside him. They'll be in one place, and we'll sever the head of both beasts. Starscream chuckled. A most inglorious and ceremonial end for so many thorns in our side. Contact Mixmaster. Tell him it's time for Damocles to launch. Within the area of New Kaun, specifically the perimeter of Darkmount, the Constructicons had gathered near a large metallic plate that was built into the ground. The 6 Decepticons watched as the plate opened up, prompting them to take a few steps back as a large device slowly began to rise from the ground. The more it ascended, the more it was revealed. It appeared to be a massive floating station made entirely out of black metal. It had many alien features about it, but what stood out the most about it was the appearance of a black Victorian castle at the very top of it, as well as the 4 massive energy cannons mounted at the very bottom. This was Damocles, and the Constructicons watched with pride as their ultimate creation reached toward the sky. And that's what's happening here. Steeljaw informed Knockout as the two were in the latter's laboratory aboard the Nemesis. I can't say I'm surprised. Knockout said, Starscream's practically addicted to backstabbing. I can think of no other way to properly diagnose the reason for his repeating failures, other than bluntly stating that he's insane. To do the same thing repeatedly and expect a different result each time. The literal definition of insanity. Steeljaw replied, yes, that would certainly apply here. But why come to me about this? Knockout questioned, why not inform Megatron? Because I'm sure that Lord Megatron is already aware. Steeljaw answered. He's had Starscream by his side for so long that I'm sure he knows exactly how he operates. As for why I'm coming to you, it's because you're a survivalist, my dear doctor. You understand when it's best to jump ship or which side would have the better chance at winning, or at least guaranteeing your safety. Megatron and Starscream will undoubtedly come to blows, so I suspect there will come a time where Decepticons must choose which leader to follow. So, brother, which one do you think we should choose? And how do I know you won't just stab me in the back like how Screamy would? Knockout questioned. Like you say, I'm a survivalist, so I'm a little cautious about who I should trust. Fair point. Steeljaw granted. In that case, how about a temporary alliance, brother? Steeljaw offered his clawed hand to the red-clad Decepticon. At least until this matter is settled, then the two of us can go our separate ways if you desire. Knockout thought for a moment. Steeljaw was no doubt conniving and deceitful, yet at the same time, it wouldn't hurt to have someone like that close in order to best keep an eye on. And he wasn't wrong either. Decepticons would have to choose which leader to follow very soon, and Knockout had to decide which team had the best chance at winning. Alright Steeljaw, you got yourself a deal. Knockout said as he accepted and shook his fellow Decepticon's hand. The Ark, Lelouch, Optimus Prime, Ratchet, Fix-It, and Elita 1 had gathered on the bridge of the Ark as they accessed the communications channel to all ships and docking bays, addressing all their forces that would participate in the coming battle. Listen up everyone, here is the plan. Lelouch began. The moment we enter the borders of the Decepticon-occupied continent, all heavy artillery on their defensive wall will be concentrated on the Ark. The vessel's shields should be able to sustain enemy fire, but only for a short time. That said, we'll have two teams deployed to neutralize the cannons and the wall itself. Drift and the majority of the wreckers will consist of one unit as they are deployed onto the top of the wall. Optimus explained. Their goal will be to destroy the cannons however they can. At the same time, Grimlock and the irregular unit will be deployed directly underneath the wall. Ratchet took over. Based on the data supplied by Starscream while he was under the effect of a Geass, we have learned that at the bottom of the structure lies a power generator that serves as a means to power at least that portion of the wall. Once it's destroyed, it should power down and create a breach in the defenses of the entire continent, which we will later use to allow the UFN's conjoined military to invade. We can also expect a possible aerial attack on the Ark, or a means to try and enter the vessel from above. Elita spoke up. So, the Black Wyvern unit, along with Sideswipe, Grindcore, and Strongarm will act as the guard to prevent any breaches from happening. From there, we will conduct two major offensive surges, one in the air and the other on the ground. Lelouch continued. The air assault will be led by the Ikaruga and Granbury Mk2 aerial carriers and will be escorted by Wizard, the aerial bots, and the Black Dragon unit. The ground assault will be led by myself and Optimus commanding the Zero Squad with the Elite Guard and Crimson Knights taking part in the attack. But before the assault commences, Smokescreen will deliver the Spark Extractor with assistance from the Phase Shifter device to neutralize a majority of the enemy army. Optimus went on. Though we can't expect it to destroy all the enemy force, we can expect heavy resistance on all fronts, more than likely led by Megatron. Should we face him on the battlefield, do not engage him. Contact the Zero Squad and allow us to handle him. If we complete this mission, we'll start a domino effect that'll lead the expulsion of the Decepticons from our world. Be sure to give them hell. Lelouch finished. Good luck to all of you. Zero out. Once signed off, Lelouch turned to face the Autobots on the bridge. All units are on standby and the Ark is nearing our destination. We should arrive at the Decepticon continent within the hour. Fix-It reported. I have the coordinates set for the Irregulars and Wreckers to be deployed via ground bridge. TAI added as she appeared before everyone. I also have an evacuation planned in the event the operation fails. Good. Lelouch nodded. We know that Schneisel and Starscream are plotting to betray Megatron, with his return likely pushing them to enact their plan sooner. This would be the ideal time to use it. We've covered all possible bases, and this is the best plan we can come up with. Ratchet said. All we can do now is hope that it's enough. It must be. Optimus vowed. Megatron must be stopped, no matter the cost. Elita looked towards him for a moment before speaking. Optimus, may I have a word? Of course. Optimus nodded as he and Elita walked out of the bridge and spoke more privately outside. Is something the matter? No, nothing at all. Elita said before smiling. I just wanted to say, I'm really proud of how much of an impact you've had on him. Lelouch. Optimus understood. I may not have met him when you first did, but I can tell how much he's grown because you were there for him. Elita continued. I see a lot of him in you, not all of you of course, but that's not a bad thing. I know things haven't worked out for us and I understand why. I've already come to terms with it, but despite becoming that leader that Cybertron needed, you also became something that Boy needed. Even if it was for a single individual, you've changed his life for the better. You may be Optimus Prime now, but when you were with him. A smile formed on her face. I still see a bit of Orion Pax in those optics of yours. A smile formed on his face too. Thank you, Alita, for your words, and for everything else. I am sorry that it didn't work out between us either, but I am still thankful that you are here. Alita offered her hand to her former lover. Now, let's build that ideal future you talked about, one where Lelouch and all his friends don't have to fight anymore. Without another word, Optimus clasped Alita's hand with his own. Odysseus looked around the corner and checked to make sure it was all clear. All he saw was Thundercracker, who gave a single nod, and that was all he needed. Come on. He waved his hand, prompting Layla and Karini to follow him as they walked onto a small landing platform near the base of Darkmount. Where is it? Karini urged. If we're spotted. Give it a minute, Thundercracker told her. A few seconds later, a small ship appeared and made its way toward the platform. The side opened up, revealing it only consisted of a single cockpit with a Viacon at the controls. That Damocles ship has left New Kaon's perimeter, we're in the clear. The Viacon told them. And this wasn't just any Viacon. This was the same one that had encountered Zero in the Fuji mines at the time of the Black Knights and Autobots' return. The one that Zero had used his Geass on to go back and rethink his choices. Then it's time to go, Odysseus said as he led his two younger half-siblings on board before turning to the Blue Seeker. Thank you, Thundercracker. The Decepticons simply nodded. Anticlea and Schneisel are both crazy, Karini exclaimed. They want to use me as a way to breed more Britannians. There's only a dozen people on that station. No way we can restart humanity. Hopefully we can find asylum with the Black Knights and the Autobots. Odysseus commented. At the very least, they should treat us a bit more fairly. Layla turned toward Thundercracker. You could come with us. I can't. I have some things I need to look into here, find out what Megatron's end goal is. Thundercracker replied. And what do you plan to do when you do find out? Layla asked. I don't know, but I'd prefer to know what's going on as opposed to being kept in the dark. The Blue Seeker said. Now get out of here before somebody notices. Thank you. Layla smiled as the door to the ship closed, the Viacon at the controls flying it away with the three former royals on board. Once he saw that they were in the clear, Thundercracker transformed and flew away to try and regroup with the rest of his forces. The massive metallic wall that surrounded the border of the Decepticon-occupied continent soon had a massive shadow looming over it as the Ark quickly descended from the skies and made its approach toward it. Two of its fortress-grade cannons had become active and turned upward towards the approaching Ark before opening fire with a pair of energy spheres that shot straight towards the vessel. However, the spheres struck a massive shield that seemed to cover the entire Ark, creating an explosion around the Autobot ship that left it undamaged for the most part. As the Ark made its way closer towards the border, multiple Decepticon dropships had ascended past the wall and were flanked by an armada of flying Viacons, be it jet or helicopter formation, all led by the Silver Seeker variety with Starscream, Thundercracker, Slipstream, and Skybite at the helm in their respective vehicle modes or Shark mode in Skybite's case. Attack, my armada, Starscream commanded as his forces flew forward. A large ground bridge portal had opened up, allowing the Grandberry Mk2 and Ikaruga to enter the skies as an assortment of flying nightmares formed a defensive perimeter around their aircraft. The ones leading this charge were Toto in his Zangetsu, Wizard in the Agravain, Silverbolt, Jetfire, Windblade, Shinken the Shenhu, Chiba, and Asahina in their Actasukas. All units form up. Defend the carriers. Silverbolt ordered as explosions soon erupted in the sky, the enemy forces opening fire and engaging in close combat. Back at the wall, the two active cannons continued their bombardment at the Ark, but the vessel's shields were able to hold for the time being. In between the two cannons, a ground bridge portal had appeared on the top of the massive wall, revealing the team consisting of Ironhide, Drift, Bulkhead, Wheeljack, Hotshot, Warpath, Chromia, Nonette in her Galashan, and Tamaki in his Wrecker Akatsuki. Alright, we split up and take down each cannon, Ironhide ordered. Bulkhead, Chromia, Wheeljack and Nonette are with me. Drift, you take Hotshot, Warpath, and Tamaki. Understood. Drift acknowledged before all the Autobots transformed and drove off in their respective directions with the Nightmares flying or rolling alongside them. Ironhide and his team were approaching the westward cannon when a series of explosions erupted in front of them, prompting them to stop and transform in order to confront the threat. Fools! None shall pass, Lugnik declared as he and Blitzwing hovered in the air with the cannon being guarded by two heavy Decepticon soldiers wielding ion displacers. Likewise, Drift and his group found their way barred as the eastward cannon was being protected by Barricade, Demolisher, and two more heavy Decepticon soldiers. "This is the end of the line for you, Autobots," Barricade told them. "We shall see," Drift said as he deployed Safeguard and Jetstorm while the rest of his team readied for battle. Meanwhile, above the Ark, a ground bridge, one under Decepticon control, had appeared as the ones exiting from that and dropping aboard the vessel included Steeljaw, Knockout, Thunderhoof, Fracture, Underbite, and last but not least, the Thanatos. However, they didn't get very far as there was already a group of Autobots and Nightmares waiting for them. Well, looks like Lelouch was right on the money as usual," Gino commented. "He wouldn't be Zero if he weren't." Grindcore pounded his fist into his palm. "Steeljaw." Layla's eyes narrowed at the wolf-like Decepticon. "Today you will face justice for your crimes." As she made that vow, her eyes lit with her blue Geass, the enigma of combination attached to the chest of her Alexander glowed in unison, as did the blue rings that lit in the eyes of Akito, Yukiya, Ryo, and Ayano. "Black Wyverns, form Hercules," Akito commanded as the 5 Alexanders leapt into the air and begun their dramatic transformation sequence. Akito and Ryo's units had transformed into the arms as Yukiya and Ayano's Nightmares converted into the legs, all linking up to Layla's Alexander, thus forming the combiner model known as the Hercules. "Oh, I never get tired of seeing that," Sideswipe commented with a grin as he drew his sword. "Now let's go kick some con ass." The Hercules, Sideswipe, Grindcore, Strongarm, and the Tristian all then charged forward to engage with Steeljaw and his team. "All forces are engaged," Toto reported from the bridge of the Granbury Mk2 with several operators, including Lloyd, Cecile, Claus, Diethard, and Nina monitoring various aspects of the battlefield. Aerial units appear to be holding their own, but the Wreckers have encountered resistance at the cannons. "Let's hope they manage to pull off their namesake, or this fight won't last long," Lloyd commented. "There is an attempt to board the Ark." One of the operators of the Ikaruga reported as Rakshata, Nunnally, Sayoko, Euphemia, Kagaya, and Misty were on board. But the Black Wyverns and the assigned Autobots have the enemy engaged. "What about the Irregulars and Grimlock?" Euphemia asked. "I just received word that they've entered the underground," Misty responded, sitting at one of the controls of the ship. A massive explosion blew away the rocks as Grimlock entered a massive chamber of stone and metal. Behind him were the units of the Irregulars, consisting of the Pegasus, Ryujin, Scorpio, and Tungsten. All 5 of them appeared to have found their target. It was a massive energon power generator that hung in the center of the cavern, all via metallic tubes that connected it to the metallic ceiling just above, which was the base of the wall itself. "We've reached the base of the wall," Alice reported. "We found the generator. If we take this down, this entire section of the wall will either deactivate or fall apart," Sancha said. "I'm hoping it's the latter," Lucretia commented with a hard look. "Wait." Grimlock raised his hand to keep them from going any further. "We have company." True to his word, the entire cavern shook as multiple Insecticons broke from the ground below and around them, all with their respective insect roars and calls. Before they knew it, the group was surrounded by at least 20 Insecticons total, among which, the ones that crawled on the ceiling near the power generator in their insect forms appeared to be Scorponic and Saberhorn. Well, look what we have here," Saberhorn commented as he transformed into his robot mode and landed in the middle of his horde, drawing his blade and pointing it towards the enemy unit of 5. "Shall we begin?" "Eviscerate them," Scorponic ordered, prompting the Insecticons to roar before charging at their enemy, who opened fire upon all of them just as Grimlock transformed into his T-Rex mode and unleashed his plasma breath in response. Meanwhile, on the ground, a massive ground bridge portal had opened, allowing the vehicle modes of Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, RC, Elita 1, Ultra Magnus, Jazz and Prowl to exit, with the Shinkiro, Lancelot, Gurren, and Raiden flying just above them. Behind that line were the Nightmares that belonged to Ogi, Cornelia, Guilford, Chigusa, Monica, Anya, Orpheus, Maribel, Aldrin, and Ashley, with an entire army of Black Knight nightmares behind them. This army soon found themselves charging directly at the army of ground Viacon troopers of various types as they opened fire at one another. The Viacon army was more than 3 times the size of that of the forces the Autobots and Black Knights led, but that didn't stop the nightmares above the line of Autobots retaliating with long-distance firing to take down the frontmost Viacons. "That's right, stay focused on us," Lelouch thought with a grin, unaware of the real threat that lies within your midst. Within the middle of the Viacon army, with all their attention solely focused on the approaching enemy force, they failed to notice a certain Autobot phasing directly up from the ground, courtesy of the phase shifter attached to his wrist. "Hey, what's up?" Smokescreen said to a random Viacon, much to his shock. "What the?" Autobot. He alerted a few of the Decepticon soldiers around him, just as Smokescreen threw up the spark extractor and dove back into the ground via the phase shifter. The second the device touched the ground, it activated. A massive surge of electrical energy exploded out from the spark extractor. Any Decepticon unfortunately to get caught up in the surge immediately had their sparks extinguished, their lifeless forms falling to the ground, and the surge only continued to grow. In a matter of seconds, almost half of the Viacon army was wiped out with more following with each passing moment. The heroes could see the growing surge as the Autobots all transformed. Just as planned, Optimus drew the Sky Boom shield and activated it, a bright blue energy barrier shield out from the shield and expanded to create a wall-like shield that would protect him and all his friends and allies behind him. However, there wouldn't be any further need for it as a single ground bridge portal opened directly above the surge of energy and something was shot straight down. It was the Dark Star Saber, thrown like a javelin at a straight angle, surging like a missile, right before it pierced the spark extractor and destroyed it, causing the surge to vanish. Lelouch and Optimus' eyes both narrowed as they saw not only all that energy disappear, but the dark purple sword that was now embedded in the ground and knew what was coming next. Flying out of the ground bridge portal that closed right behind it was a certain Cybertronian jet before it transformed in midair to reveal the Decepticon leader, who fell and landed dramatically on his feet and one hand next to his own sword. All eyes and optics in the invading army set their sights on him as he slowly stood up. Whether they were lined with fear or anger, all they could do was stare at the monster as he gripped the Dark Star Saber and pried it from his ruined device and pointed it towards the army. "Well, don't stop on my account," Megatron encouraged with a grin. "This is it." Zero ordered his forces. "Ogie, Magnus, Maribel, go around and lead the rest of our forces and push back what's left of the enemy. The rest of us will deal with Megatron." "Understood," Ogie responded. "Acknowledged." Ultra Magnus nodded. "Be careful," Maribel said before their army split in 2 separate directions to move around their allies and the enemy leader. This left only Zero, Optimus, Suzaku, Bumblebee, Colin, RC, Rai, Alita, and Anya and Marianne to face against the Decepticon leader. 9 against 1. That hardly seems fair, Megatron mused, snapping the fingers in his free hand, signaling 5 additional Decepticons to approach from multiple directions. The vehicle modes of Onslaught, Brawl, and Swindle came in from the side before transforming together, Brawl and Swindle taking the forms of giant legs as Onslaught leapt and transformed into the chest unit, with Blastoff and Vortex flying into link up and form the arms just as the head of Bruticus appeared, his blood-red optics shining to life as he stood alongside his leader. Bruticus. Optimus had drawn the Star Saber with the Sky Boom shield. "Fortunately, we had anticipated this, Jeremiah." "Yes, Optimus sir." Appearing from another ground bridge above Bruticus was a rather large nightmare. It strongly resembled the humanoid mode of the Dark Siegfried, only it was far more heavily armored. It had a pair of jet boosters in its back and shoulder-mounted hadron cannons, but it was primarily painted orange with the Autobot Black Knight emblem on its chest. This was the Siegfried Loyal. "Take this, the storm of my loyalty." Jeremiah, who now bore a black and orange uniform, declared inside his unit as he fired a hadron blast at Bruticus. Those cannons were powerful enough to push back against the Decepticon combiner. "Colin, Rai, RC, Alita, Anya, you help Jeremiah." Zero ordered. "Bumblebee, Suzaku, we'll help Optimus deal with Megatron." The assigned group departed to engage the Combaticon combiner as Optimus was the first to charge and engage Megatron, both clashing their respective Star Sabers against one another. Just like before, when the two blades clashed, it created a surge of blue and purple energy that seemed to keep everything else back. With a roar, Megatron slashed at Optimus, who blocked the Dark Star Saber with the Sky Boom shield but pushed forward to knock Megatron back as Optimus swung the Star Saber, which Megatron blocked with his twisted and unholy blade. He kicked Optimus in the leg to knock him down and tried to swing downward, prompting Optimus to roll out of the way and avoid not only the slice but also the resulting vertical dark energy wave. Just then, Megatron was attacked from behind as Bumblebee leapt up, wrapped his arms around Megatron's throat. "Hey, guess who's back?" Bumblebee spoke, surprising Megatron and leaving him open for Bumblebee to flip over, grab around Megatron's arm that held the Dark Star Saber and kick both his feet into his face. "You can speak," Megatron said in a low growl. "You took my voice, but I took it back." Bumblebee glared. "And we'll make sure that you never rob anyone of anything ever again." Suzaku vowed as the Lancelot and Shinkiro flew towards Megatron, who swung the Dark Star Saber to send a horizontal energy wave at the pair of nightmares. Both flew around it as they came back together and did something truly unexpected. "Suzaku, link up. Form the Silver King," Zero stated. "You got it," Suzaku said. The Shinkiro and Lancelot then underwent a transformation. The Black Nightmare's head folded down into the chest as the arms were withdrawn and merged with the legs, creating a pair of heavily armored legs attached to a lower body. The White Nightmare's own legs were folded inward and then outward towards the sides to merge with the arms. The central chest unit then linked up with that of the Black Nightmare as both the Lancelot and Shinkiro combined. They linked up and their paint job faded from the initial black and white of the separate two units to turn almost completely silver in color, aside from the bright red emblem of the Autobot Black Knight Alliance that shined on its chest as well as the glowing blue optics, as well as the shining blue energy wings that appeared from its back. As for the pilots themselves, their own separate cockpits became one with Suzaku sitting below up front and Lelouch in the back just above him, not too dissimilar from the original Gawaine's two-pilot cockpit. This was something Megatron did not expect. His stunned silence was what left him vulnerable for the Silver King to draw both its MVS blades, which shined red and attacked with the combined Nightmare to fly directly at Megatron and bring both its blades down on him, who instinctively used the Dark Star Saber to block. But then the Silver King fired its central chest cannon, scoring a direct hit on Megatron and blasting him away, sending him up in an explosion. "Looks like we're really fighting together now, thanks to the power of the Forge," Suzaku said. "I just wish we had a chance to properly test this. Circumstances aside, it is a nice feeling to be fighting together like this." Lelouch smiled to his oldest friend, who smiled back at him. The Silver King regrouped alongside Optimus and Bumblebee as they all saw Megatron step out of the smoke and flames from the explosion, the Dark Star Saber in his hand as he glared at all of them. "Looks like you might have been right, Optimus," Bumblebee commented. "The reason we found VV dead was because Megatron stole his code." Optimus glared. "So, he is immortal now." The idea of Megatron being unable to die really made Suzaku's blood boil. "But he's not invincible," Lelouch said as his Zero Mask activated. "We'll capture him and subject him to a cortical psychic patch. We'll learn how he escaped and everything he knows about Neo Ragnarok. He is not getting away this time." "I agree," Optimus vowed, wielding both the Star Saber and Sky Boom shield. He then led the charge, Bumblebee and the Silver King right behind him as they engaged their conjoined enemy. The Siegfried Loyal flew all around Bruticus as the Combaticon Combiner tried to swing his massive arms at him but was unable to land a single hit. Jeremiah piloted his Nightmare up some distance and fired his Hadron cannons again, which Bruticus blocked with the helicopter blades on his arms serving as a shield before he retaliated with his flamethrower. But Anya flew her newly upgraded Mordred and retaliated with her own Hadron blasts to collide with Bruticus' flamethrower and create an explosion between them. Anya's new Mordred was essentially the same build as the Dark Mordred, just without the built-in explosive failsafe as well as the dark paint job. Now it was a bright magenta color with hints of black. Bruticus glared before swinging his rotating helicopter blades at the pair, both flying backwards to avoid the deadly blades. RC and Alita both ran around the giant and fired their respective energon blasts at him, but this only seemed to irritate Bruticus, who moved to try and stomp on them. But when both female Autobots moved out of the way, Bruticus raised his arm to deliver a seismic strike to try and obliterate them, only to feel multiple explosions across his back and turn to face the Gurren and Raiden that hovered together. "You want a piece of me, human garbage?" Bruticus exclaimed. "Yeah, but maybe you should pick on someone your own size," Colin stated. "Right, time for Firestorm." "With pleasure." Rai grinned as the Raiden and Gurren flew together and underwent a transformation all their own as well. The Gurren's legs folded and merged together to create a larger leg unit while its chest folded in on itself, making something a bit bulkier and larger, while the left arm combined with the surger attached to the right arm for the same effect. The Raiden mirrored its transformation with its legs merging together, the chest and body reconfiguring into something larger as its own right arm combined with its own surger attached to the left arm. Both units combined together, like two separate halves. Unlike the Silver King, however, this combined unit's paint job didn't change, as the right half remained red with the left half was still blue. The head units combined as a pair of energy wings shined to life, both the wings and eyes of this combined unit turned purple. Just like with Lelouch and Suzaku, their cockpit had merged together with Colin up front and Rai in the back. This was the Firestorm. "What?" Bruticus exclaimed. "Looks like we got a special trick up our sleeves too." Rai grinned. "Wanna see what this badass mother can do?" Colin also grinned. The right surger claw activated and shined with a bright red energy surge, as the left surger claw did the same with a cluster of electricity. Both claws came together, transforming and configuring to form a single cannon-like weapon that unleashed a massive beam that combined red energy and electricity together. Even when Bruticus attempted to block the blast with his rotary shield, the resulting explosion of energy and electricity was powerful enough to blast and push him down to the ground. "Impressive, well done you two." Alita nodded. "That's my girl." RC smirked with approval. "Well done." Anya was impressed, as was the spirit inside her. "Lelouch has found himself quite the woman," Marianne thought. "Ready to break in our new toys, Orange Boy?" Rai asked Jeremiah. "Orange you say?" Jeremiah chuckled. "That is the name of my loyalty. And I plan to engrave it into the memory of any Decepticon who dares to challenge our righteous cause." "I'll take that as a yes," Colin commented as they all saw Bruticus stand back up. "I'll crush you all," Bruticus shouted before charging forward. More explosions continued to light up the skies as the aerial forces shot one another down. Nightmares gunned down Viacon in their flying alt modes. Said Viacons returned fire and obliterated many Nightmares and their pilots inside, one of which happened to be Hong Ji-yu, as he was shot down by Slipstream in her jet mode before transforming to watch his burning Nightmare fall. "So, amusing to think that insects can fly." Slipstream smirked, only to screech in pain as she was sliced in the back by a katana from the Akatsuki piloted by Chiba. "Even insects carry a nasty bite to them." Chiba glared as she flew to engage Slipstream in close combat. The Shenhu and Agravain combined their respective heavy weapons and concentrated their firepower on the face of an incoming dropship just as Silverbolt flew down and released a series of bombs, to finish it off, resulting in the Decepticon vessel losing its position in the air and begin its flaming descent. "We have incoming," Wizard warned as they saw Thundercracker lead a squadron of Seeker Viacons in their direction, which opened fire on the group as they did their best to avoid the resulting energon fire. The Shenhu however got nicked in the shoulder and was almost knocked down, shaking up Shink inside. "These damn cons." Shink. Joe and Asahina flew in with their respective to cover him. "Retreat closer to the vessels for cover, we'll handle things out here." "Thank you." Shink accepted as he retreated in the Shenhu closer towards the Granberry Mk2. Windblade had transformed and crossed her blades to block the bite of the incoming Sky Bite. But his thrusters were able to push her towards the side of the Ikaruga, slamming her back into him. She grunted as she tried to push back as hard as she could, but Sky Bite's shark mode was much stronger than it appeared. Was never really into seafood. She attempted to crack as she turned her turbines onto the Sharkticon and let loose a whirlwind to try and push him back. This was enough for him to loosen his grip slightly and give her an opening to deliver a kick to Sky Bite's underbelly to knock him off. This gave Windblade enough room to transform and fly straight up, with Sky Bite flying after her in pursuit. Toto had diced one Viacon in half with his Zangetsu's katana but looked in shock to see Starscream's jet mode heading towards the Ikaruga rear. "Starscream is heading for the Ikaruga." Toto reported as he flew his nightmare to try and intercept him. I won't make it in time. The head seeker chuckled as he readied his missiles, aiming them for the airship's engines. Time to show these humans who the true master of the sky is. However, right as he opened fire, the missiles were quickly shot by rapid energon fire from his right side, forcing Starscream to fly up and avoid the resulting explosion. He transformed and hovered in the air to face the jet mode of the Arielbot who stopped him. He too transformed to face his enemy. You're not the only master of the sky here, Starscream. Jetfire told him. The Seeker growled. If you had shown this kind of backbone, maybe we could have pushed Megatron back during the war, and he wouldn't have gained access to the Dark Enegron. You sided with him to save your own skid plate. Jetfire pointed at him. When all is said and done, you're only in this for yourself. That emblem on your chest is nothing more than a convenience for you. Let this be my final word of advice to you, my former friend. Starscream aimed his missile wrists at him. Look out for yourself, because the only one you can truly trust is yourself. Spoken like a true coward. Toto's Zangetsu came straight toward him from above, bringing his katana downward with a slice, which Starscream barely avoided with a slice before transforming and flying away, with the Arielbot and Black Nightmare flying in pursuit. We have a clear shot on one of the enemy drop ships. Cecile reported from the Grandberry. Then let's take it. Fire the main cannon. Toto ordered. The Grandberry's central mounted cannon began to light up before it unleashed a powerful energy blast, one that pierced right through a Decepticon dropship, which quickly exploded. Two dropships were quick to retaliate by firing a series of homing missiles at the Grandberry. Though the Blaze Luminous shield was able to protect it for the most part, the impact shook up the ship and the occupants inside. Well, that rocked our world, Claus commented as he held onto the nearest console for support. Shields have dropped to 65%. Nina exclaimed. We can't afford to advance too much. So, we remain on the defensive and let the others try and take down as much as they can. Lloyd commented. Must be hard with all those flying cons around. They know what will happen if they lose this battle. Diethard stated. That's why they're throwing everything they have at us. Yeah, figured it wouldn't be a walk in the park. Claus said. Meanwhile, on the top deck of the Ark, even as the wall cannons continued to pound at its underbelly, the Black Wyverns and their Autobot companions appeared to be holding their own against Steeljaw and his pack. The wolf-like Decepticon himself had transformed into his vehicle mode to avoid the Harkins of the Tristan Divider that shot towards him, but as they recoiled, Steeljaw gunned for Geno's Nightmare and transformed with a leap, using the gathered momentum to close the distance, grapple onto the Tristan's shoulders and slam it back down onto the ground. Steeljaw proceeded to slice at it, but Geno slammed his Nightmare's arm into the face of Steeljaw to push him back, allowing him to quickly draw one of the Tristan's swords and slice at Steeljaw, who caught the blade with his claws and grabbed Geno's unit by the shoulder and throw him away. Grindcore and Underbite charged at each other and grappled against one another, but Underbite appeared to have the advantage as he used his massive jaw to flip Grindcore over himself and send him crashing to the ground. Underbite then proceeded to bite down onto the metallic floor beneath him and swallow it to fuel himself. You ready to get stomped, Autobot? Underbite challenged. As Grindcore tried to pick himself up, he glanced upwards to see the Hercules and Thanatos in the air, both duking it out when an idea came to him. Hey, Ukiah, get ready for a little kickball, Khan style. Grindcore contacted him as he positioned himself just right with Underbite charging him at full speed. Right as the Chompazoid got to him, Grimlock had ducked under the bite and picked up Underbite by his jaw and used his own momentum against him to flip him over and send him flying into the air. Ukiah, who had picked up Grindcore signal, saw Underbite get tossed and realized what was going on. Guys, we need to move down. Now. Through their shared connection, the rest of the Hercules pilots knew what Ukiah was thinking and followed along. The Hercules disengaged battle with the Thanatos and quickly flew down towards the flying Underbite, prompting Ukiah to pull at the controls, causing the left leg to stick out in the form of a powerful kick to the side of Underbite's jaw, causing it to cave in slightly and send Underbite in a certain direction that caused him to bounce and slide off the side of the Ark before falling off the vessel completely and to his death on the ground. Nice kick. Iyano grinned. Thanks. Ukiah smirked as he glanced down to Grindcore, who gave a thumbs up and a grin. Heads up, here comes Shin. Rio warned as they saw the Thanatos re-engage them with a series of blasts from its shoulder cannons, which the Hercules avoided as it pulled back to the side before flying upwards to clash its sword against the primary weapon of Shin's nightmare. Yes, good Akito. Shin grinned like a madman from inside. Let's keep this dance going until one of us gives out. Thought you'd never ask. Akito replied before Rio pulled back on the Hercules, free arm and dealt a punch on the Thanatos that knocked it against the deck of the Ark, but it regained its flight and flew back upwards with the Hercules chasing after it. Fracture had unleashed both his mini-cons in the form of missiles, all of whom struck Strongarm and knocked her down. Eraser and Divebomb both transformed and pinned Strongarm by her shoulders as Knockout loomed over her with his buzzsaw. While I do admire your lustrous finish, I have a job to do. Nothing personal. Knockout commented and was ready to bring his saw down on her, only to have it blocked by Sideswipe's sword before he kicked him back. He then swiped his blade to knock off the two wicked mini-cons as he helped Strongarm back up to her feet. Thanks Sideswipe. She smiled. You looked like you could use some help. He smiled back as the two came back to face the recovering Knockout as well as Fracture. Thunderhoof tried to get in on this as well as he tried to charge both Autobots from the side and ram them with his antlers, only to get tackled by Grindcore and pushed down to the ground. Nice antlers. Grindcore said as he grabbed the aforementioned attachments to Thunderhoof's head and pinned him down with his foot before ripping them off, causing him to yell in pain. He didn't give much of a response because Grindcore jammed one of the broken antlers into Thunderhoof's chest and the other into his face. The Decepticon was dead in a matter of seconds after that. The Ark itself shook even further, much to the concern of the Autobots on it and their Black Knight allies. Somebody's gotta take care of those cannons, Gino muttered before focusing on Steeljaw again. Down below, as the cannons continued to pound away at the Ark, Bulkhead gave a yell as he pounded in the face of Lugnut with his mace, who retaliated with a strike from his axe to knock him back. Fool. Nobody challenges the will of Megatron. Lugnut delivered a kick to Bulkhead to knock him down to his front and jumped to land on top of his back and pin him down as he raised his axe executioner's style. In the name of the glorious Decepticon race, I. Suddenly, he was sniped in the eye by Chromia with her rifle, who had hung back slightly. This caused Lugnut to cry in pain and forced him to drop his own axe to Bulkhead's side. The green Autobot noticed this as the blind Lugnut backed off him, prompting the green Autobot to reach and grab the axe before giving a loud yell as he slammed it right into Lugnut's face, obliterating his head and killing him right then and there. You talk too much. Bulkhead spat out some energon before looking towards his fellow wrecker. Thanks, Chromia. No problem. She nodded in response. The two heavy Decepticon soldiers fired their ion displacers at Ironhide and Wheeljack, keeping them from advancing closer to the cannon as they tried to return fire with their respective blasters, but there was a reason this class of Decepticon was referred to as a heavy soldier, because their heavy armor was hard to crack through, even with Ironhide's cannons. At the same time, Blitzwing hovered in the air near the cannon and continued to fire his shoulder cannons at the flying Galatian. Coward! Come down here and face your inevitable fate. Blitzwing called out in his hot-headed persona. Why don't you come up here and make me, Three-Face? Nonet challenged. I will crush you, meat piece by meat piece. Blitzwing transformed into his flying alt mode and flew directly at the Galatian as Nonet had hoped. She drew her Nightmare's MVS and was quick enough to slice off Blitzwing's blasters, but not quick enough to avoid being grabbed as he transformed and pushed her down to the side of the cannon, close to the lip of the cannon just as he switched to his logical persona. I've enjoyed our repeated bouts, Black Knight. But I believe we have reached the end. Nonet glanced towards her side and saw that the cannon was ready to fire its next shot onto the Ark, and that's where she smirked. Yes, we have. Pulling on her triggers, the Galatian fired its /Harkins at Blitzwing, forcing him off right as the Galatian gave a kick to knock Blitzwing right into the path of the cannon just as it fired. Now that's going out with a bang. Blitzwing laughed in his maniac persona right before he was obliterated by the blast. The Galatian then flew directly in front of the cannon and fired her Varus repeatedly down its hole until multiple explosions erupted from the inside. Cannons down. Clear out now. She called out to her teammates. You heard her, fall back. Ironhide ordered as he, Wheeljack, Chromia, and Bulkhead transformed and drove away from the exploding cannon just before it went up and took out the two heavy Decepticon soldiers with it. At the base of the eastward cannon, Warpath grappled with Demolishor as they tried to press their strength against one another, but Warpath was able to deliver a headbutt to push back Demolishor and fired a point-blank shot from his chest cannon to blast a hole through the Deception. But Warpath soon found himself shot at by the two heavy Decepticon soldiers, forcing him to fall back as he was gunned in the side, feeling the energon already leaking. "Eat hot lead, Khan!" Tamaki exclaimed as he fired a volley of missiles from his Wrecker Akatsuki towards Barricade, who had transformed and drove past the resulting explosion and closed the distance to strike down his nightmare upon transforming back. Only for Barricade to quickly find himself on the defensive from the sword slashes of Drift as he sliced toward him, which Barricade avoided before slugging Drift in the face. Hotshot moved in with his vehicle mode, hoping to close the distance between himself and the cannon, but the two heavy soldiers directed their ion displacers at him and opened fire. "Alright, I got their attention. Now it's your guy's turn." Hotshot transformed and leapt into the air, revealing the disc modes of Safeguard and Jetstorm attached to his arms before they deployed from him and launched themselves at the heavy soldiers. Safeguard had drawn his Naginata and used it to impale through the face of the heavy soldier he was launched at, while Jetstorm flailed his nunchucks all over the face of the second. Though it didn't kill that one, it did distract him as he was forced to let go of his ion displacer, which Hotshot was quick to grab and turn it on its previous owner, firing and killing him. With both soldiers down, Hotshot turned his newly acquired weapon towards the only remaining Decepticon and fired upon Barricade. He grunted and yelled in pain as he was gunned down from behind, allowing Drift to finish him off with a decapitation slice. "All enemy forces are down. Destroy the cannon. Aim at the base," Drift ordered. "With pleasure." Tamaki grinned as he fired his Wrecker Akatsuki's missiles at the base of the cannon, Warpath doing the same in his tank mode, and Hotshot adding fuel to the fire with his ion displacer. After several seconds of sustained fire, explosions and flames erupted from the base of the cannon before it ceased operations and was shut down. "Kablam!" Warpath said with a nod. Not long after that, Ironhide and his team were quick to join up with them. "I see you guys are all wrapped up here," Wheeljack noted. "Now let's join the main party." "Got that right." Ironhide accessed his comms. "TAI, the wall cannons are down, we need ground bridge so we can help Optimus and the others." "Perfect timing. Grimlock and the Irregulars are finishing up things below, so you really don't want to stay on that wall for too much longer." TAI responded just as a portal opened up in front of them, in which they wasted no time in entering the vortex just before it closed. Insecticons hollered as they attacked the Irregulars, but they seemed to be more than holding their own against the bulky insect-like Decepticons. Two of which attempted to leap towards Lucretia's tungsten, but she was quick to fire her double Gatling energon guns to mow them down quickly enough. A third tried to grapple and bite at her from the side, but she brought up her right gun to block its bite before aiming her left gun at its throat to fire and tear the head clean off. The Scorpio had decapitated one Insecticon with one of its dual blades before flying up to meet three more in their flying insect modes that charged and shot towards her. But using her own Geass ability, Sancho was able to detect the exact positions and trajectories her enemy would take and flew directly at them. Using her ability and skills as a nightmare pilot, the Scorpio had cut off the wings of one to send plummeting to the ground. She then crossed and sliced both her blades in an X formation to cut through the face of the second before delivering an airborne kick to the third's face, and when it fell on its side, she sliced that one's head off as well. Dalk's Ryujin thrusted its arms forward to activate a pair of flamethrowers to burn the Insecticon in front of her alive. When a second tried to rush her through the burning remains of its brethren, the Ryujin quickly moved to avoid its crushing arm before grabbing said arm and using her own Geass-enhanced strength, channeled through her nightmare, to rip the arm off and using it to smash that very Insecticon to pieces. Alice's Pegasus moved with such speed and grace, using a single sword to slice past two Insecticons, both falling apart the moment she moved past them. Though she was quick to react and block the sword thrust from Saberhorn, who smirked at her as they locked blades. Ah yes. Another chance to duel. He thrusted and lunged his sword at Alice, but she quickly parried all his strikes. Ha! Tally-ho! With one attempted thrust, the Pegasus moved to the side to grab the arm with her nightmare's free hand and used her own sword to completely cut off his arm, much to Saberhorn's shock and pain. He tried to swing his other sword in his remaining arm, only for the Pegasus to leap up and avoid the slice and kick him down. While he was down, Alice quickly severed Saberhorn's remaining arm and aimed her blade at his face. Now that wasn't sporting. Not sporting at all, Saberhorn stated. I don't fight for sport. I fight to win, and to protect those I care for, Alice replied. Though surprised by her response, Saberhorn couldn't help but smile as he conceded defeat. Well played, warrior. Finish it. Alice was somewhat caught off guard with her enemy accepting defeat with grace. She was still quick to act on it as she impaled her sword through his spark chamber, ending his life quickly. Even with his life ended, Saberhorn still smiled, having met his end at the hands of a true warrior. At the same time, Grimlock had already obliterated most of the Insecticons in his T-Rex form, stomping on several, crushing others with swipes of his tail, incinerating them with his plasma breath, and of course, biting them down and ripping them apart with his jaws. Yet, Grimlock didn't seem to notice Scorponic's scorpion form digging up from the ground underneath him and leaping into his leg, quickly crawling up and around his body, lashing out with his tail and stinger, doing some damage to Grimlock's body and even drawing energon. However, this only seemed to irritate the Dinobot as he transformed back to his robot mode with Scorponic clinging to his back, prompting Grimlock to ram his back into the wall and repeated the process until Scorponic was knocked loose. Forced to transform back, Scorponic tried to crawl away, only for Grimlock to grab him by his tail, haul him up and grab his body with his other hand before ripping his tail out. Scorponic didn't have the time to scream in pain before Grimlock raised him up and slammed him on the ground so hard he was completely crushed. I'm done with bugs. Grimlock spat as the Irregulars regrouped around him. Grimlock, we're all clear here. Sancha reported. No more enemies in sight. Then let's make sure we have an exit. Grimlock accessed the comms. We need a ground bridge. A second later, a portal was opened behind them as all 5 of them set their sights on the energon core that served as the power source for this section of the wall. Light it up. Transforming into his T-Rex mode again, Grimlock unleashed his plasma breath as the Irregulars opened fire with their Nightmare's respective long-ranged weapons. After several seconds of constant bombardment, the energon core began to crack before it started to light up. Seeing this as their cue, the group quickly fled into the ground bridge just as the core went up in a devastating explosion. Boom! Asterisk. A large explosion, followed by several smaller ones, erupted at the base of that one section of the wall that just had its cannons destroyed. The explosion tore through the foundation, resulting in the destruction of the wall's structural integrity, and leading to its collapse. This created a massive opening in what was thought to be a near-impenetrable barrier surrounding the Deception-occupied continent. They did it. Fix-It stated as he and Ratchet all looked at the screens on the Ark's bridge to see the collapse for themselves. Grimlock and the Irregulars were able to escape in time. TAI reported as her holographic mode appeared before them. They and the Wreckers have joined the battle and are helping the others to push back. Then it's our turn, Ratchet ordered. Advance the Ark further so that we may push back all resistance in the sky. Signal Wizard and the others to help Magnus and Ogi in wiping out the enemy ground forces. Right away, TAI confirmed before vanishing. The Ark began its advance towards the battlefield, its own weaponry coming online to lay down fire on all the Decepticon dropships. They didn't last very long and were quickly shot down. With the Ikaruga and Granbury Mk2 closer to the main Autobot vessel, neither needed any further protection. The enemy is being cleared from the air. Wizard reported. All air units, descend and help the ground forces clear out everyone on the ground. With that command, the Agravain, aerial bots, and the Black Dragon unit all flew down to assist the Elite Guard, Crimson Knights, and the newly arrived Wreckers and Irregular unit, in attacking the Decepticon army, which had already lost more than 60% of its forces. With the raw power of their combined army, being led by the likes of Ironhide, Toto, Ogi, Ultra Magnus, Cornelia, Maribel, Silverbolt, and even Grimlock, this appeared to be a truly unstoppable force. With most of the Decepticon army being routed, Bruticus continued to do battle against the group consisting of Elita 1, RC, Jeremiah, Anya, as well as Colin and Rai, both co-piloting the Firestorm. The 3 large Nightmares flew up and around, blasting at Bruticus in every direction, keeping the massive combiner on the defensive. When the Firestorm brought its claws together again to shoot another combined energy beam, Bruticus attempted to defend himself with his rotary blade shield. However, this only left him vulnerable for the Siegfried Loyal and Mordred to fire its own heavy artillery at Bruticus' back, bringing him down to his knees. Useless bugs. Bruticus attempted to stand, only to feel his arms being enveloped by a strong magnetic force. He looked in surprise to see Alita 1 directly in front of him, with the act of the polarity gauntlet in her hands, which she used to keep him pinned as she forced him onto his hands and knees. "I got him. Finish him now," Alita ordered. RC moved in first in her motorcycle mode before transforming and sliding on the ground underneath him on her back, firing 2 precise shots from her energon blasters as she slid into Bruticus, eyes to blind him before transforming again and zipping past him. "He's blind. Colin, Rye," RC stated. "We're on it." Rye responded as Alita lunged the polarity gauntlet forward, sending a repulsive force that knocked the blinded combiner on its back. With him down, the firestorm lunged at him and plunged both of its claws into his face, piercing through its metal. "Think we're bugs, huh?" Colin said to the giant. "Just remember it was these bugs that sent you to hell." Colin and Rye activated their respective surgers, sending a combined surge of radiation and electricity all throughout Bruticus' body. It was too quick for him to even begin disassembling as trails of fire and lightning went to all of the 5 Combaticons that made up Bruticus before he finally exploded. Boom. Asterisk. What was once one of the strongest walking weapons of mass destruction in the Decepticon army was now nothing more than a pile of molten and fried steel. The Combaticons were no more. At the same time, Megatron had clashed the Dark Star Saber against the Sky Boom shield wielded by Optimus, who attempted to strike with the Star Saber, but Megatron pushed forward to knock Optimus back slightly and grabbed the arm that held the glowing blue sword while attempting to bring the Dark Star Saber on him. However, the Silver King fired an energy beam from its central cannon right at Megatron, pushing him back. With him disoriented, Lelouch and Suzaku flew their combined nightmare directly at him, delivering a spinning kick to his face and send him rolling back, though Megatron drove the Dark Star Saber into the ground to skid to a halt. Lelouch smirked. "I can see why you enjoy that kick of yours, Suzaku. It's actually kind of fun." "Told ya." Suzaku smiled back. Megatron attempted to get back up, only to be bombarded by energon blasts as Bumblebee ran around the side. Megatron swung the Dark Star Saber to send a wave of dark energy towards the scout, but Optimus was quicker as he swung the Star Saber to send his own bright energy wave to cancel out Megatron's attack. "Smoke. Now!" Bumblebee exclaimed. Suddenly, Smokescreen phased up from the ground behind Megatron via the phase shifter and rushed him. "Think fast." With a leap, Smokescreen phased partially through Megatron's hand and quickly swiped the Dark Star Saber from his grip before landing on his back, holding the evil sword in his hands. "What?" Megatron was more than a little surprised. "Hey, cool looking sword," Smokescreen commented with a grin as he stood up with the Dark Star Saber. "But I don't think you'll be needing it anymore." The Lord of the Decepticons growled as he would have advanced upon the young Autobot, only to have Optimus stand in front of him and point the Star Saber directly at his face. The Silver King hovered just above the Prime and had its weapons trained on him. It didn't take long for Megatron to be completely surrounded as the firestorm landed behind him, RC and Alita on its flanks as they aimed their energon blasters. Bumblebee was on his left with his own blasters, the Mordred landed on his right with her Hadron cannons primed and ready, and the Siegfried Loyal positioned above the firestorm from above. "It's over, Megatron," Optimus told him. "Your army is being routed, your defenses are breached. Surrender. You will be coming with us. We have a lot to talk about," Lelouch said with his eyes narrowed. Megatron looked with a scowl in all directions at first, before glancing amusingly at the Siegfried Loyal. Jeremiah Gottwald, "You were arguably the first Britannian enemy that Zero and the Autobots made, and so thoroughly humiliated by them at that. Yet you stand with them." "I did, yes," Jeremiah acknowledged. "But that was before I knew who he really was, and the purpose of their mission. And by serving them, I am now serving Lady Marianne." Megatron chuckled. "Oh, if you only you knew." They were fortunate enough that Megatron didn't know of Marianne's true predicament, but that didn't stop Anya from casting a glance at her own reflection in the glass of her screen in her cockpit, where she saw the image of Marianne's face with a guilty expression. "We may indeed have much to talk about, Lelouch." Megatron mused towards the young revolutionary in his combined nightmare with Suzaku. However, I do not believe we have the time. We've received confirmation that Bruticus has been destroyed. Misty reported. And, it looks they've captured Megatron. Really? Euphemia exclaimed in surprise. They've captured Megatron. Optimus, Zero, and the others appear to have him surrounded. The screen popped up to reveal the Decepticon leader was surrounded on all sides with no way out. They even separated him from his weapon. Now isn't that quite the sight? Rockshad amused in her typical manner with a smirk. It must be quite humiliating for him. They did it. They did it. K-Gaia cheered as she wrapped her arms around Nunnally and Euphemia. We've won. We won. We really won, didn't we? Nunnally couldn't help but feel emotional as she and Euphemia shared teary-eyed smiles with one another. Sayoko placed a hand on Nunnally's shoulder and looked towards her with her own smile and a nod. Lelouch, Optimus, Suzaku, Bumblebee, all of you, we did it. Nunnally couldn't feel any happier. Wait, we're detecting a large object entering the airspace. That got all their attention as the monitor zoomed in to see something descending from the clouds in the sky. Something incredibly massive. The minute everyone on the Ikaruga saw it, their excitement vanished and was replaced with an ominous sense of fear. What, in the Allspark? Ratchet stuttered as he and Fixit saw the massive object from the Ark's bridge as well. It appears to be a space station of sorts, Fixit observed, but he couldn't help but feel a tad bit scared. What the hell is that thing? Claus questioned as everyone on the Grandberry Mk2 also saw the station. Scanning now, Toto had already brought up the information they could get from a long-ranged scan as the scientists on board were already reading it. Heavily armored, long-ranged, fusion cannons. Nina exclaimed. But, they're not like those wall cannons we just took down. These energy readings, they're stronger. Cecile was already terrified. Oh dear, Lloyd gulped as Diethard looked in genuine fear. The fight on the Ark's deck came to a halt as all Autobots, Black Knights, and Decepticons saw the station's approach. While most of them looked in shock with an unsettling sense of fear sweeping over them, Steeljaw smirked. Soundwave, we need a ground bridge. Steeljaw requested through the comms. A portal opened up a second later, prompting Steeljaw, Knockout and Fracture to run and enter said portal, with the Thanatos flying after them. Though Shin glanced inside towards the Hercules, specifically the part that had his younger half-brother inside. Goodbye Akito, Shin said before the Thanatos also entered the portal, which quickly closed. That can't be a good sign. Sideswipe commented. Akito felt his skin run cold. The way his brother talked to him, and the appearance of this station, every instinct in his body told him that death was approaching. Get inside the Ark, now. Starscream chuckled as he disengaged from the battle. Perfect timing. His jet mode flew straight towards the station as all the battles below had already came to a halt upon seeing the massive object. Autobot, Black Knight, Decepticon, all of them felt a strong sense of fear the second they saw it. All except one. Upon seeing the smirk on Megatron's face, Optimus pointed the Star Saber closer to him. What is that, Megatron? Believe it or not, old friend, this is not my doing. Megatron mused. But I think we know who is responsible. Don't we, Lelouch? That's when it dawned on him. He honestly kicked himself for not thinking of it sooner. How could he not have seen something like this coming? A look of anger and fear had formed on Lelouch's face as he glared up at the station. Schneisel. He desperately opened all the comms channels. All forces fall back. TAI commence emergency retreat. Now. From the very top of the fortress that sat atop the Damocles station, sitting within the confines of his own personal control chamber with Kanan by his side, Schneisel grinned evilly as he gazed upon the battlefield via a large monitor in front of him. Target locked on Optimus and Megatron, sir. Kanan reported. Fire. One of the 4 fusion cannons aboard Damocles had lowered and aimed at the battlefield below. A massive surge of green energy was seen at the lip of said cannon before unleashing a massive green energy beam. Multiple ground bridges had already opened across various parts in the battlefield as the Autobots and Black Knights scattered to make for the nearest portal just as the beam inched ever closer. It didn't take long for Optimus to realize just where the beam was going to hit. His location, and that of his allies and Megatron. Behind me. Now. Optimus exclaimed as he brought up the Sky Boom shield and activated its full power. Bumblebee, the Silver King, Alita, RC, the Firestorm, the Mordred, the Siegfried Loyal, and Smokescreen, who still carried the Dark Star Saber, were already behind him as the energy from the shield of the Primes formed a curved dome-like wall around them, while Megatron just simply smirked unaffected as the beam struck. Boom! Asterisk. A massive green explosion erupted right as the fusion blast hit. It already began to emit a massive energy wave that would incinerate anything it came into contact with, that included every remaining ground-based Viacon that was still on the battlefield. The only ones that even had a single chance of escaping the neon green inferno were those that could fly, including the Seeker Viacons as well as Thundercracker and Slipstream, and even Skybite, but most weren't so lucky. Those closest to the blast point were also incarnated. And that was the case for multiple unfortunate Black Knight Nightmares and Autobots as well. Though many of them were able to escape via the emergency ground bridges, including Ogie, Ironhide, Ultra Magnus, Cornelia, Bulkhead, Wheeljack, Geass, Toto, Jetfire, Guilford, Chigusa, Monica, Tamaki, Warpath, Nonette, Drift along with Safeguard and Jetstorm, Chiba, Shink, Joe, Windblade, Wizard, Maribel, Aldrin, Orpheus, Ashley, Jean, and Sokia. Grimlock, Alice, and the rest of the Irregulars also made it, along with at least half of their remaining forces. However, there were many that weren't so lucky. Including countless unnamed Black Knights that were caught up in the blast. Those that didn't make it included Asahina, Prowl, Hotshot, Chromia, Silverbolt, Leonhardt, and Makira. What was most gut-wrenching was that many of their friends and comrades would see them be snuffed out. Their metallic bodies caught up and incinerated in the fusion blasts, along with any humans inside the metallic shells. They could only watch in horror as those they knew and fought alongside met their end in a matter of hellish seconds. The Grandberry Mk2 and the Ikaruga were close enough to the Ark that when the main Autobot vessel expanded its shields, both flying carriers were encompassed within the protective barrier of the much larger ship. But when the fusion blast hit, even as the waves of green death washed around them, the force of the impact was enough to shake the Ark somewhat and threw out most of the vessel, rattling Ratchet, Fix-It, as well as Akito, Layla, Sideswipe, Grindcore, Yukia, Ayano, Strongarm, Ryo, and Gino, all of whom had safely made it inside the vessel before the Damocles even opened fire. However, the smaller vessels were more than a little shaken as everyone inside the Ikaruga and Grandberry Mk2 were knocked down to the floor rather hard. As she attempted to pull herself up, Nunnally gazed up out the main window to see the green energy passing over. Her eyes widened like saucers as the green light reflected in her pupils. And in that instant, something in her heart told her that something terrible was happening right now. At the epicenter of the inferno, Optimus had kept the sky boom shield up as it had protected him and everyone else from the blast. A ground bridge portal had already been called in. The Silver King and Firestorm having split apart into their individual nightmares as they, Bumblebee, Smokescreen, the Mordred, Siegfried Loyal, RC, and Alita had already run into the vortex. But they stopped to turn around to see that Optimus wasn't with them. When they gazed back, they saw that he was still outside the portal, keeping the sky boom shield up and the deadly energy at bay. "Wah, what are you?" Lelouch stuttered. "You have to come, Optimus." The last of the Primes turned around to face all those that were dear to him. A look of understanding was written all over his face. That's when each of their eyes and optics widened in shock and even terror as they realized what was about to happen. He had to keep the energy at bay in order to ensure they all made it to safety. While Jeremiah, Smokescreen, Anya, and even Marianne were certainly shocked, Bumblebee, Suzaku, Colin, Rai, RC, Alita, and most of all, Lelouch, they could only look in horror as they knew what he was doing. Optimus Prime didn't plan on coming with them. He was going to stay behind. He had to. Even though looks of dread had formed on all their faces, he only smiled and said 3 words. "Till all are one." He had lowered the sky boom shield to throw it and the Star Saber into the vortex just as the blast encompassed him, and the ground bridge vortex began to close. "Optimus!" Lelouch screamed. However, that would not be the end. Not wasting even a fraction of a second, Alita had drawn the polarity gauntlet and used to grab Optimus, pulling him in rapidly with the magnetic powers of the gauntlet set to max for attraction. The force of the pull was so great and so quick that she couldn't stop Optimus from slamming into him and everyone else and out the other side of the portal. All 6 nightmares and 5 Autobots were flown out of the vortex just as it closed and into one of the many hangar bays of the Ark. The Star Saber, its dark counterpart, and the Sky Boom shield all clattered to the ground with them. Even with the Shinkiro flat on its back, Lelouch had already exited out of the cockpit in a frantic panic as he tried to address his fellow leader. Optimus. When he set foot on the ground however and saw what had become of him, he gasped in terror. Optimus' right arm and both his legs were completely gone, most of his paint job was scorched near black, his chest was red hot with tears and blast marks scattered all over his body, and half his face appeared to be melted off. His one optic was barely functional as his breathing was shallow. He was still alive, but just barely. Likewise, everyone else had similar reactions as the humans stepped out of their mechs. Colin gasped and covered her mouth in shock. Smokescreen couldn't believe what he was seeing. Suzaku's eyes widened like dinner plates. Arcee's metallic face became pale. On his mouth hung open as her eyes wavered. Rai looked like he was about to have a panic attack as the state of Optimus reminded him of how he found his mother and sister all those years ago. Jeremiah was in a state of disbelief. Bumblebee's body shook from where he stood, and Alita looked in a mixture of horror and grief. With a shaky voice, Lelouch accessed the comms. Ratchet, get us to Horai Island. Return to base, now but, send us an Optimus to Preceptor's lab via ground bridge right now. What? Why? What's going? Do it. Lelouch screamed as tears flowed down his eyes and he fell to his knees. Optimus needs help. Bridge US to Preceptor's lab immediately. Get everyone else back to Horai Island now. The inferno had finally ended, and just as it had, one larger ground bridge portal had opened to allow the Ikaruga and Granbury Mk2 to enter and return to Horai Island while the Ark flew away from the desolate battlefield as fast as it could. When it was all said and done, all that was left was a flat piece of scorched earth that had incarnated everything. Even more of the barrier had been destroyed as it too was caught in the blast. There was nothing left, nothing but the shadow of the dreaded Damocles that hauntingly hung over Ground Zero. Although roughly 56% of the Autobots and Black Knights were able to retreat, those that remained as well as any other surviving Decepticon are confirmed to be terminated. Kanan reported to Schneisel as he continued to sit in his command chair. We can also confirm that Starscream, Thundercracker, Slipstream, Skybite, and a large number of Seekers were able to escape the blast and have made it to Damocles. What about Zero, Optimus, and Megatron? Schneisel asked. Kanan had brought up a holographic screen of the epicenter of the blast right before the beam struck. Footage shows that a ground bridge appeared right before the fusion blast made contact. Though we are unable to get a clear visual at the moment of impact, it is highly likely that Zero and those with him were able to escape. But it is also confirmed that both Optimus Prime and Megatron were at the point of impact when the blast hit. It is highly likely that they are terminated. More than likely, Starscream had entered the chamber with a diabolical grin on his face. Though they both have survived experiences that would have ended any normal Cybertronian, it is next to impossible for them to have lived through a blast of pure fusion energy, one that can atomize even Cybertronian metal. Starscream gave a bombastic laugh. At long last, Optimus Prime and Megatron are no more. Their sparks are extinguished. This prolonged war of theirs is finally over. Not quite yet, my friend. Schneisel said rather calmly. We need to finish the job. We need to finish off the survivors. So long as Lelouch is still alive, the people of Earth have someone to rally behind. We need to fix that. Of course, Starscream accepted. And once that is done, we can wipe what's left of this pitiful species off the face of the planet. We'll take what's left of the Decepticon army that is so willing to follow its only leaders and use Damocles to travel the galaxy, build a new empire from every planet and species that we conquer with this ultimate weapon. Let those Britannian fools try and procreate however they can. With only a few dozen humans left, their species will be doomed to fail. Let the galactic reign of Starscream begin. All hail Starscream. He praised to himself as he danced in pure joy and celebration. Unlike his overly extravagant and flamboyant partner, Schneisel's sinister joy came in the form of an evil smile as he held a white king chess piece in his hand. I warned you not to underestimate the White King, Optimus. The madman thought to himself. You were a worthy adversary. Thank you for the challenge. And with this, dear little brother, I call check. Slowly, Megatron's optics began to open as he stared up at the metallic ceiling of an unknown location. He slowly arose from a lab table, gazing around to see only one other occupant that had been by his side the whole time. Soundwave. Megatron acknowledged as he sat up and then stood from the table. I trust it went according to plan. Soundwave gave only a single nod in confirmation. Excellent. He gazed at the palm of the hand of Liege Maximo and the glowing Geass emblem of his personal code. True immortality is finally mine. Where is the Dark Star Saber? Soundwave's visor showed footage of the battle where Smokescreen had stolen it. The footage then showed Smokescreen and the others enter the ground bridge portal. Unfortunate. Megatron said. Either Lelouch destroys it in my absence or seeks to use it himself. If I'm able to reclaim it, then good. Otherwise, it won't stop Neo Ragnarok. The silent Decepticon then opened a space bridge portal, revealing Steeljaw, Knockout, and Fracture, and even the Thanatos that had Shin Hyuga Shang, as they stepped out and into the laboratory. More for our inner circle. Megatron asked Soundwave, who nodded once more. Welcome to Fold, Steeljaw, Knockout, Fracture, and Shang, is it? Indeed. The Thanatos cockpit opened as the cybernetic Shin Hyuga Shang stood up. This is the first time we've met face to face, Megatron. And it is a pleasure to finally make the acquaintance of the one who will end everything. He grinned evilly with his cybernetic face. A pleasure it is, Lord Megatron. Steeljaw bowed. I heard what Starscream and Schneisel were planning. While those two are certainly conniving and ruthless, I think I'd feel a bit more secure if I was on the side of the strongest. A smart move. Megatron nodded. Yeah, that's great and all. Fracture rubbed off. Now, where in the scrap are we? Welcome back to Cybertron. Specifically, Shockwave's personal laboratory. Megatron replied. It is from here that we will launch our counterattack. With Starscream and Schneisel both believing me to be gone, they will be unsuspecting as we make our move to take Damocles from them and use it to strike the Autobots and Black Knights while they are weak and claim the last thing that I need to achieve our ultimate victory. Take that flying monstrosity. Knockout questioned. With all due respect, Lord Megatron, US and what army? The doctor shouted. Those two lunatics have all but wiped out 2/3 of our own forces. Anyone left is going to side with them. What can we possibly have that can so easily turn the tables? Rather than feel insulted or angered by the outburst, Megatron merely smirked. Follow me. He gestured for the Decepticons and their cybernetic companion to join him as he turned around and walked through a metallic door that led to another part of the laboratory. In this chamber was Shockwave, who worked at a console that was connected to his latest experiment. At the very center of this lab was a giant glass tub filled with a yellow fluid and something within. Something massive and made out of metal. And it was alive, albeit in a state of suspended animation. It was curled up so it was hard to make out any distinctive features, but there was something about it that seemed very beast-like. Is it ready? Megatron asked. Yes, Lord Megatron. Shockwave confirmed. The specimen is fully cultivated and need only activate upon my command. Then let us awaken our new pet. Megatron urged with a sinister grin. Shockwave then pressed a series of commands on his console, activating the devices on the ceiling that was attached to the tank. This sent an electrical current to activate the internal systems of the specimen inside. Just as the fluid began to drain from the tank, a pair of yellow eyes opened as the creature emitted a low growl. The demon and dragon cometh. All hail Starscream, the head seeker, now de facto leader of the Decepticons, uttered in sinister glee before his seeker Viacon forces repeated the chant, this time rather loudly. All hail Starscream, they chanted as they raised their fists. I can't hear you. Starscream encouraged, placing his hand to his audio receptor, encouraging his forces to chant once more. All hail Starscream, the seeker Viacons chanted. One more time. He pointed forward in jubilation. All hail Starscream! All hail Starscream! All hail Starscream! They chanted over and over, the narcissistic, self-loving, Decepticon dancing to their chants as if it was his jam. Of course, there were only two seekers that didn't join in the cheering and chanting. Is he serious right now? Slipstream questioned. Unfortunately. Thundercracker replied as they continued to watch Starscream bask in his own praise. How much longer do we have to put up with this? Slipstream muttered. Hopefully, not too long. Thundercracker answered. And as if that wasn't enough, Starscream's own dance was being broadcasted all throughout the Damocles station that he was residing at, being witnessed by everyone on board, including all the Decepticons that were stationed under his newly appointed command. Among them were the Constructicons. Remind me again why we decided to side with Starscream and not Megatron. Longhaul questioned. Because the whole reason we even joined the Decepticons was because Megatron promised us a better future than just being construction workers. Mixmaster stated. And we got Devastator because of that, right? Scrapper put in. We did, and we certainly became stronger, but we're still just builders. Scavenger replied. If anything, Devastator is just another weapon for Megatron to point at his enemies. Exactly. Mixmaster agreed. The Combaticons were given all the better missions, while we just hung in the back, building more weapons for him. But no longer. We're done being just builders and weapons. With the Combaticons and Bruticus all gone, we're now the strongest Decepticon force alive. Megatron may have used us as weapons, but who's to say Starscream will treat us any better? Hook questioned. We all know how much of a lying backstabber he is, and that human he's with isn't all that different. Well, it was either that, or get blown up like everyone else. Bonecrusher replied. That, and we're the only ones that know how to properly maintain Damocles. He needs us. Mixmaster said. If Starscream does plan to stab us in the back, he can't maintain this place on his own. It'll fall apart. If we go, he goes with us. Unbeknownst to them, Skybite was around the corner and heard everything. Wretched cowards. He muttered to himself as he clenched his fist in anger. At the same time, Schneisel continued to sit in his command chair with Kanan by his side as usual as the doors opened up and a certain former Britannian consort entered. Ah, Anticlea, I trust you're satisfied with the results. Schneisel queried. Very. The former Empress sneered. Not only have we finally rid ourselves of that accursed Megatron, but we've also even struck a critical blow to those damned Black Knights and their Autobot abominations who started this whole thing. You're not even upset that your own son, along with Karini and Layla, are now missing? Kanan asked. That boy is a coward. I could care less what happens to him and those little brats. Anticlea dismissed. But, with the remaining Decepticons now under our control, we can rebuild Britannia. Now spacefaring empire. We're no longer limited by our own planet. The time has come for us to take the stars. After, of course, we finish the job. Schneisel replied. We've dealt a blow to the Autobots and Black Knights, but they're not quite destroyed yet. Once we've destroyed their base, we'll use Damocles' firepower to eliminate all capitals of every remaining country on this planet. We'll leave the rest of humanity to fight among themselves for the scraps of what's left of Earth. How exactly do you plan on finding their base? Anticlea asked. It's been hidden all this time. Schneisel chuckled. On my supposed failed mission to retrieve one of the Yakin relics, the Avalon fell. I had expected our foes would take the remains and use it to improve their own weaponry, which is why Starscream and I developed a special tracking device, one so small it could be considered nanoscopic, they'd never even notice. That tiny little device has revealed to us their location. A screen on the monitor shined to life to reveal a map of the planet, with an active red dot pointing to a specific location in the Pacific, not far from the Asian continent. Damocles is already on its way there. We should reach the base by the end of the day. Kanan informed. Brilliant. I'd expect nothing less, from our new emperor. Anticlea sneered as she bowed towards the man, whose sinister grin only grew. Horai Island. Grief and sorrow. That was felt wherever Shirley, Rivals, Millie, and Sarah went on the island. Any Black Knight or Autobot they found was in a gloomy state, either crying and finding comfort in any of their brothers and sisters in arms that were near them or venting out their anger in some way. Not that they could blame any of them. They all knew what had happened. Several good people and bots were lost in that last battle, many of them they were friends with themselves. This is awful, Shirley muttered. How did it all go so wrong so quick? Rivals questioned. It felt like just yesterday we were on top of the world, but now. This is the price of war. They all looked to see Diethard approaching them with a grim look on his face as well. Death is a certainty. We all know it, and yet, we're still unprepared for it. Never expected you to be so remorseful, Diethard. Millie commented. Neither did I, he replied in honesty. Despite the amnesiac Sarah, who held Arthur in her arms, not being fully aware of the situation around her, she did have a good grasp of what was going on. She had seen people die before, as well as people grieving over their lost loved ones. Though she herself didn't feel that much grief back then as she didn't know many of those people, here was a different story. Though she didn't know many of these people or metal giants either, something in her heart told her that she was at least familiar with them. So much so that seeing them all in such a remorseful state was enough to nearly bring her to tears herself. Damn it all. Tamaki threw an empty bottle of beer against a wall, which shattered upon impact before he slumped to the ground. Inoue, Minami, Sugiyama, all of them. All the old guys from the old crew, me, Colin, and Ogi are all that's left. Tamaki, he looked to his side to see Ogi, Chigusa, and even Guilford approaching from behind, each with their own remorseful expressions. You know this won't help. What? I'm not allowed to cry over all our friends dying. The hothead exclaimed. Of course not. We're all devastated by that. Ogi exclaimed. But is this really what they would want from us? What Naoto would have wanted from us? You're not the only one who lost something, man. Wheeljack said as he approached from the other side. Nonette was right below him, with Warpath right behind. We lost our own too. The kid, Hot Shot, even the Lady Chromia, they're all with the other wreckers who didn't make it back. I know, you all keep telling me, Tamaki muttered, but he looked in surprise to see Chigusa offering him her hand. I'm sorry for your friends, really I am. I lost mine too. Not just here, but also in Britannia. And I know you're probably gonna say that we deserved that, and maybe we did, but that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. We've all felt this pain before. Guilford spoke up. Losing a friend, a home. Or even those you considered family. Nonette added. We're all hurting, Warpath said, sounding uncharacteristically remorseful himself. But, I know a way we can at least use that hurt. When we get back at the cons, and we'll take all that pain and shove it down their throats. Tamaki looked up with a look of rage in his eyes. Okay, that I can get behind. At the same time, Ashley appeared to be sitting by himself as he looked over the list of casualties from the recent battle, though he only seemed focused on a specific group. Kuzan Montauban, Alan Necker, and Franz Vallo. All the surviving members of the Ashura force from Euro-Britannia, they were gone just like all the others. Now he was the only one left of his own squad. And it hurt. I'm sorry. The one who spoke that was none other than Maribel, with Aldrin, Orpheus, Jean, Sokia, Toto, and Monica. Your friends, I really am. Same to you, Ashley said. They were supposed to get married, ya know, the teary-eyed Sokia said. Marika and Lenhart, she sniffled. It was arranged, but they did love each other and, she tried to laugh to lighten the mood with a joke. An arranged marriage where, they actually love each other, crazy, huh? She couldn't finish, prompting Toto to hold her hand in comfort, causing Sokia to fall down as she cried her eyes out and Toto was quick to hug her with Maribel doing the same. Damn, that is pretty bad. Ashley said. Jean ended up sitting next to him, looking at him with remorseful and understanding eyes, placing a hand on his shoulder in consolation, which he appreciated as he put his own hand over hers with a sad smile. Hey, where's your uncle? He asked Orpheus. Oigros took Grimlock and the Irregulars on a brief patrol to make sure no Decepticons followed our trail back here. He replied. What are we going to do now? Aldrin wondered what they were all thinking. She gave a gentle gasp as she felt her own hand being grabbed by her own twin brother who gave a remorseful expression of his own. I don't think that's up to us to decide. Orpheus said as he and Monica happened to share concerning looks, the two slowly reaching out to take each other's hands. Meanwhile, Chiba found herself alone as well as she stared at a group photo of herself and the other four holy swords during their time in the JLF. But now, she was the only one left other than Toto. Urabe, Senba, and now Asahina, they were all gone. Excuse us, Chiba. She glanced to her side to see Jetstorm and Safeguard approaching, the former being the one to speak and get her attention. Our deepest condolences for your loss. Asahina was a good soldier, and we considered him a friend. Safeguard added. But it is clear that you had more of a history with him and the rest of your old team. Our condolences might not be enough, but we still offer them. Jetstorm said as they bowed their heads. Chiba sniffled before smiling. Thank you, but just because I have more of a history, doesn't mean that they meant any less to you than to me. And, I'd appreciate it, if I had someone to mourn alongside me. The two mini-cons gave her sad smiles of their own as they moved to sit down beside her, the young woman in between them as she placed her hand on her face and cried. Jetstorm placed a hand on her shoulder while Safeguard did for her back, and they provided what comfort they could. Not far from their spot were Drift, Shink, and Joe, all of whom had understanding and sorrowful expressions of their own. And yet, there was some form of pride that Drift felt for his students as they expressed empathy alongside their comrade, something he didn't exactly teach them, but a quality he valued nonetheless. Diethard, the former student council, and Sarah all continued to observe these moments of mourn and grief with similar feelings building up inside. Yeah, real sad isn't it? Claus commented as he walked up with a flask in his hands, and beside him were the Black Wyverns with Sideswipe, Strongarm, and Grindcore. Layla, Aikido, all of you. Shirley said. How are all of you doing? You were all, there. It's hard to put into words. Layla couldn't find the way to express her feelings as Eliza curled up to her legs in comfort, prompting Arthur to jump from Chera's arms and snuggle up to the fellow cat. It's a damn joke, that's what it is. Rio exclaimed as he kicked the ground in anger. We were winning that damn fight. Then the cons show up with whatever the hell that damn thing was, and blew it all to hell. Damn it all. Rio. Ayano grabbed him by the arm. That's not gonna change anything and you know it. He looked away with misty eyes and tried to pull himself away, but Ayano wouldn't budge. She kept a firm grip and looked to him with watering eyes of her own, which ultimately caused him to give up as he sighed hard and let some of his tears flow. Did you know many of those guys? Rivals asked the bots present. Weren't you all on the same team with many of them? Yeah, Grindcore confirmed. A couple wreckers. One of which was Ironhide's girlfriend. Sideswipe added. Poor guy, can't imagine what he's going through. I didn't know Prowl, at least not on a personal level. Strongarm confessed. But, seeing a comrade in arms lose his life, it's not something I was prepared for. I don't think anyone could be prepared for something like that. Aikido said. This coming from the ghost of Hannibal. Millie put in. A scoff and a smirk briefly formed on Aikido's face. Funny in that I was used to it all a long time ago. Layla looked toward him with a sad expression as he continued. But when I met all of you I guess that all just faded. But the thing with being able to actually feel again, is that you feel all the grief that comes from something like this. Layla wasted no time in wrapping her arms around him as she too shed some tears of her own. I know something we can do. Yukiya said darkly. We can hunt down and wipe every single con off the face of this planet. No less than what they deserve. I'm sure many people here are thinking the exact same thing. Diethard said. But we'll need to get organized first. We need proper leadership. How are they doing? Sarah spoke up. I heard that one of them was hurt but, what about? Lelouch, Shirley replied with a sad sigh. Knowing him, he's not taking it very well. The beeping of a monitor. That was the only noise that was heard as all of them had gathered together in the medical bay. While Ratchet, Perceptor, Lloyd, Rakshata, Cecile, and Nina all did everything they could and worked the machines that he was attached to, Lelouch, Bumblebee, Suzaku, Nunnally, Colin, RC, Rai, Bulkhead, Toto, Ironhide, Cornelia, Jazz, Yuffie, Alita, Kagaya, Ultra Magnus, Jeremiah, Sayoko, and Anya had all gathered around the large metal bed where their broken and fallen leader laid. Where his missing legs and right arm were, they were connected to tubes and cables that kept the flow of energon going. The rest of the scars and openings across his broken body were either hastily patched together, or connected to cables that were attached to various monitors and machines that hung above him. The mighty Optimus Prime, a great warrior they all knew and respected, or loved in some cases, now appeared to be knocking on death's door. Such a sight was something that none of them could comprehend or even accept. And yet, it was happening right in front of them. Why he'll be alright, right? Nunnally asked shakily as Cornelia put her hands gently on her shoulders. It's too soon to tell. Perceptor reported. But the internal damage is beyond substantial. Honestly, it's a miracle he's still alive. Because he's Optimus freaking Prime. Bulkhead stated. He's not going down without a fight. But look at him now, Bulk. RC said. I don't wanna believe it any more than the rest of you. RC, don't. Colin interrupted, her own voice cracking up. Please, just, don't. Not after, what happened. That's when the mood died down once again as they were all faced with the grim reminder of their loss. How did it happen? Geass questioned. Where did that thing even come from? Starscream never mentioned it when he was our prisoner and under Lelouch's Geass. Alita added. Because we only asked about the defenses surrounding Newtown and the Decepticons' home turf. Suzaku responded. We should have been more thorough. I knew Schneisel was planning something. Cornelia growled. That is so typical of him. Hanging back with a secret weapon while everyone else was fighting. Just like back on Shikin Island. Yuffie remembered. With the Avalon. Ah, memories. Lloyd recalled that as well, only to get nudged in the side by Cecile. Having all your enemies gathered in one place to deal a deadly strike and eliminate most if not all of them. Anya said. It's clever and devious. Given Starscream retreated from the battle just before it occurred, it's reasonable to believe that he and Schneisel have been working together. Toto spoke up. That's no surprise. Ultra Magnus said. Starscream's always wanted Megatron's position for himself. No doubt he is using his newfound weapon as a means to force the other Decepticons to submit to him and his new partner. So, what do we do now? Rai asked. How do we stop something that big? We weren't able to get a full scan of that station at that time, but the sheer amount of firepower that it displayed there, Cecile shook in her spot. And I have a sneaking suspicion that's only scratching the surface. Rakshata put in. We may have lost many of our own, but the rest of the UFN's military is still at our disposal. Kagaya said. We can find a way to counter. Most looked towards Lelouch, who stood the closest to Optimus, sighed as the Autobot leader remained unresponsive. His head was hung down as his hair covered the upper part of his face, making his eyes impossible to make out. It was clear that out of everyone here, Lelouch was taking it the hardest and it wasn't difficult to see why. They all knew how close he was to Optimus. Ratchet, Lelouch muttered, getting the medic's attention. Give it to me straight, will he live? I don't know. Ratchet confessed honestly. We'll try but, even when Bulkhead was exposed to toxin, I've never seen anything this extreme. The internal damage, even if Optimus does survive, he may never be fully functional again. Lelouch's fists clenched at his sides, his teeth ground together as so much anger and grief flowed through his body. Though it seemed like he was struggling to keep it all in. It felt as if he might explode at any given moment. Marianne, from Anya's eyes, saw her son in so much grief and wanted to reach out and comfort him, but she stopped herself when a certain scout stepped forward. Lelouch, let's talk outside. Bumblebee said. The young revolutionary and his Autobot partner were out in the hallway just outside of the medical wing and appeared to be alone for the most part. And yet, neither of them said anything. It was almost like one was expecting the other to say something. Getting tired of the silence, Lelouch spoke up. What? He questioned, keeping his face hidden as he held his head down. Bumblebee shook his head. You've never been really good at keeping your emotions in check. You're angry. Of course, I am. Lelouch practically screamed as he shot a look of pure rage and ire at Bumblebee. His face was red, not just from the anger, but from all the tears that were now flowing down his eyes like a waterfall. How else am I supposed to feel after that? We lost. About half our ranks were wiped out in an instant by those cowards. Optimus, he's not. I refuse to accept this. I refuse to accept that Optimus, life might end at the hands of Schneisel and Starscream. Despite Lelouch's vengeful screams, Bumblebee didn't lose composure. He just stared at Lelouch and let him get it all out. And then he spoke. You don't want his life to end. Period. Bumblebee said. None of us do. You're not the only one who's devastated by this. I've known him longer than you have. Then how are you not enraged by this? Lelouch questioned. I am angered beyond reason, Lelouch. Bumblebee raised his own voice, causing Lelouch to look at him in surprise. After being so used to hearing the monotone beeps, it was surreal to hear real and emotional voice of the first Autobot he could call a friend. I want nothing more than to pound Starscream into scrap and stomp on Schneisel like a bug. But we can't do that as we are now. Yeah, we lost. We lost big. But we didn't lose everything. He kneeled closer to Lelouch's level. We still got about half our own forces, not to mention all of humanity's military. We're not dead yet. But more importantly, we're not without leadership. Optimus, Bumblebee paused for a moment. We can't count on him right now. It hurts, I know it does, but it's the truth. But you know what's also true? You're still here. Lelouch's eyes widened in surprise as Bumblebee went on. You are every bit the face of the revolution as Optimus is. He knows that better than anyone. Why do you think he made you his partner? Because you are every bit the leader that he is. You know he's right, Lelouch. Turning around, he was surprised to see Suzaku with Colin and Nunnally beside him. After we met again in Shinjuku, I was so lost in my own guilt. I wanted to die because I felt it could atone for what I did to my father, or maybe I just wanted to run away from it all, and I buried that all under a sense of self-righteousness. But despite that, despite me literally attacking you and everyone else, blaming you for every single bad thing that had happened since then, you never gave up on me. So you don't have the right to give up on yourself either. I won't let you. None of us will. Colin spoke up next. You know that I know exactly what you're going through, Lelouch. Naoto and Cliffjumper, I lost a brother twice over. And yeah, it hurt so much, but I didn't fall because I knew I still had others around me to help pick me back up. I had RC and I had you. So even if you're falling apart right now, I'll help put you back together. Because you're going to put the rest of us back together too. And when we're all back on our feet and we've finally won this damn war, she had walked up to him to grab his hand as she looked into him with eyes of fire and love. We're going to put the whole world back together. Big brother, Nunnally had stepped up to gently grasp his other hand. Optimus is a father to me too. And I am hoping beyond hope that he makes it through this, just as much as you are. But, so many other people have lost people they'll never get back again. They need someone to make them believe there is still hope for a better future, one that we can all laugh and smile together. And the one who will make that future possible is you. I believe in you with all my heart. Lelouch almost couldn't believe what he was hearing. But then he reminded himself of just the kind of people he had surrounded himself with. Optimus Prime was the father he always wanted and he had hoped that he would indeed pull through. But Optimus wasn't all he had. He had the rest of his family and loved ones here with him. He wasn't alone anymore. We need Zero right now, Lelouch. The world needs Zero, Bumblebee said. And I know you're going to deliver, in the flashiest way possible. He joked. That earned a laugh from the young revolutionary, but that laugh turned into a sob as he broke down and let all his emotions all flow out at once. Nunnally was the first to embrace him as he fell to the ground with Colin right behind him. Suzaku also kneeled to his level and did the same with Bumblebee being by his side the whole time. The four of them would see that Lelouch let this all out, and when he was ready, they would help him stand back up on his feet so that he could be the leader they all knew he would be. After a few minutes, Bumblebee received a call on the comms. Bumblebee, this is TAI. Wizard, Grimlock, and the Irregulars just finished their patrol and what? Cons? B questioned. Well, sort of. TAI answered. Just one, and a few former Britannian royals. Grimlock, Wizard, and the Irregulars, all within their respective nightmares, stood on a small island off the coast of the Chinese Federation, having spotted the vessel that was flown by a random Viacon, who had Odysseus, Karini, and Layla inside. Wanting to avoid drawing any potential spies, the ship was brought to an island where the four defectors were currently surrounded by the towering machines who maintained constant watch over them. Though this made them more than a little nervous. Why you were in the Chinese Federation, trying to save Tianzi? Odysseus said to Grimlock. I'm hoping she's alright. The only response he got was a growl from Grimlock, causing Odysseus to sink in fear. Sorry. Yeah, these guys don't seem like they wanna talk to us. Karini pointed out. A ground bridge portal then opened before them as Bumblebee's vehicle mode drove out. All four of the doors opened up as the masked Zero and Nunnally stepped out from the driver's and passenger seats respectively, with Colin and Suzaku from the back seats, allowing Bumblebee to transform. Alice was surprised to see Nunnally here, but given how Lelouch, Colin, Suzaku, and Bumblebee were all present as well, she was confident that Nunnally was safe. Nunnally. Odysseus didn't expect to see her here, neither did their half-sisters. Odysseus, Karini, Layla. Nunnally greeted somewhat coldly. So cold I see, Karini commented. Not what I expected from you of all people. Why are you here? Zero questioned, getting to the point. What do you want? We seek sanctuary. Layla answered. We escaped from the Decepticons and we want a place to stay where we're safe. Just you? Colin questioned before looking at the Viacon. What about him? I don't want to be a Decepticon anymore. The Viacon himself responded. I deserted. He then glanced down towards Zero. I'm sure you don't recognize me, but we did meet. You had a chance to execute me, but you told me to walk away and rethink my life. So, I did. Lelouch gasped in surprise underneath his mask as he recalled that instance. You're from the Fuji mines. Really? Suzaku questioned, looking just as surprised as everyone else. Are you sure? I'm certain of it. Zero confirmed. He remembered using his Geass on this Viacon and telling him to rethink his life. But he never expected to meet him again, much less under these circumstances. Who are you? What's your name? Bumblebee asked the Viacon. ST3V3. The Viacon replied. What? Colin questioned. I don't have a name. Most Viacons are given identification codes and that's mine. ST3, Colin tried to say it, but couldn't even remember the whole thing. You know what? I'm just going to call you Steve. Makes it easier. Steve, Karini questioned. You're naming an alien robot, Steve. I kinda like it. The Viacon himself admitted. It's better than just remembering some random numbers. Layla added. Why should we trust you? Bumblebee questioned. Any of you. Why come to us? Schneisel has lost his mind. Odysseus began. The rest of our family isn't all that far behind. That flying fortress that you saw. It's called Damocles. He and Starscream want to use it to basically destroy all life on the planet and then travel the rest of the universe to build a new Britannian empire that'll stretch across the stars. All the rest of the Britannian royal family and nobility are there with the intent of restarting humanity. That's probably a dozen people at most. Suzaku said. You can't repopulate all of humanity from that. Tell that to them. Karini stated. They even wanted to use me as reproduction. Layla too. Schneisel should be smart enough to see something like that won't work. Nunnally said. He'd be condemning humanity to extinction. I think that's exactly his intent. Zero assumed. He believes humanity is violent by nature. The initial reason he joined the Decepticons was to bring order to the chaotic humanity. But with all the recent victories we have, he's probably deemed our species too far gone and is sentencing us to extinction. Talk about a god complex. Colin scoffed. Starscream pretty much hates humanity too, so I imagine this must be a huge relief for him. Bumblebee added. But that's of course if Megatron lets them get that far. Suzaku said. Megatron. Steve the Viacon questioned while Odysseus, Karini, and Layla looked in shock. But he's dead, isn't he? Karini questioned. We may not have been there, but we saw what happened at that battle, and the damage that Damocles did, Odysseus said. Nobody, not even he could have survived that, right? Layla looked in genuine fear. Do not underestimate the leader and founder of the Decepticons. Zero spoke with grave seriousness. He's made cheating death an art form. Damocles. Within the black castle that sat atop the floating station of Damocles held a glorious celebration. The Constructicons and a dozen Seeker Viacons all lined up like a royal military on each side of the chamber with the dozen of Britannian noble and royals. And standing at the very end of the chamber were Starscream and Schneisel, with a Viacon Seeker and Kanan standing next to them respectively, both with crowns in their hands. The crown that Kanan held was something akin to a white hat with a red gemstone in the center, while Starscream's was far more flamboyant, being gold and lined with dozens of jewels. Triumphant music was being played by the Constructicons as they blew into the horns. When Starscream and Schneisel were about to have their respective crowns placed on their heads, the Constructicons blew into their horns once again. Get on with the ceremony. Starscream urged. However, the Constructicons blew into their horns once again, prompting Starscream to aim his Energon blaster and shoot a single shot to obliterate the horns in a single line, something that caused Schneisel to chuckle in amusement. How dare he? Guinevere scowled. Such an insult to our heritage. Despite that, Schneisel and Starscream were each given their respective crowns, causing Guinevere to smirk. Regardless, a new age of Britannia is upon us. All hail Emperor Schneisel. All hail Schneisel. The other Britannians cheered, including Anticlea. All hail Schneisel! All hail Schneisel! All hail Schneisel! Even Kanan bowed with a grin of his own before he joined in. All hail Schneisel! Ahem. Starscream coughed to his Seeker forces and the Constructicons, prompting them to do the same. All hail Starscream! All hail Starscream! All hail Starscream! Both their names were cheered and praised, and neither could be more ecstatic. But it all came to an end when Schneisel raised his hand before attempting to speak. My fellow Britannians, and Decepticon allies, with this turn of events we will. Suddenly, a ground bridge portal opened up near the entrance of the castle, much to the shock and confusion of everyone present. Who dares disrupt this coronation? Anticlea questioned. I've heard those exact words before. A voice spoke out as a certain individual, one that nobody would ever expect to see again, much less hear, stepped out from the portal and revealed himself to all. It was bad comedy then, and it still isn't humorous now. Megatron! Starscream exclaimed as he, and everyone else looked in shock and even genuine fear. Impossible. For one of the few moments in his life, Schneisel was caught completely off guard, his eyes wavering in shock and even fear. Why you were at ground zero when Damocles fired. You should be dead. Megatron scoffed in amusement. Death no longer applies to me. Starscream's look of fear turned into growl as he tried to regain control of the situation. I don't know how you survived, but I am leader of the Decepticons now. And I will see to it that it remains that way. Constructicons, Seekers, on me. With that command, the Seeker Viacons and Constructicons all aimed their Energon blasters at Megatron while Starscream himself drew the Apex armor and placed the component on his chest, causing the entire armor to morph around his whole body, and he felt his confidence grow. Even Schneisel sat back in his command chair to press a button on the arm, causing a dome-like shield to form over himself and Kanan, with several more forming over the Britannians gathered around, keeping them safe. I'm not much of a fighter, one of my very few flaws, but I am content to sit back and watch as my friend beats you to death. Schneisel commented as he relaxed. As you can see, my former master, you are outnumbered and outmatched. Starscream boasted. It's unfortunate that you lost your precious Dark Star Saber, otherwise you might have stood a chance. Then I suppose it's fortunate I brought along my pet to play. Megatron stepped to the side, away from the still active ground bridge portal that he had arrived in as something else began to emerge from it. Something much bigger. A large metallic claw stomped out first onto the ground, as the rest of its massive body followed. The moment they all saw it, be they Decepticon or Britannian, their expressions morphed into pure terror. Even Schneisel was rendered speechless at what he saw. It was a massive metallic dragon-like beast covered head to toe in an outer armor that looked thicker and more imposing than any other Cybertronian creature. It stood on 4 legs and had a massive tail behind it, along with a set of enormous wings on its back. But what was its most terrifying feature was its face, 4 tendrils attached to its jaw, and burning yellow optics that seemed to have an ever-burning fire raging behind them. It let loose a massive and ear-splitting roar that forced all the humans to cover their ears. What in the Allspark? Mixmaster stuttered. A Predacon. Starscream recognized it. But they've been extinct since the beginning of Cybertronian history. Not anymore. Megatron sneered. Shockwave has always been one to tamper with creation. Now then, time to play, my pet. Megatron ordered the Predacon. The beast roared once more as it charged forward, prompting all the Decepticons nearby to duck and cover to try and avoid its crushing jaws and claws, though several Seekers weren't so lucky as many of them were crushed underneath the claws of its stomps, with one being unfortunate enough to be caught in its jaw before being bitten in half. The Predacon saw the Constructicons all fleeing out toward the entrance and making their way outside, prompting the dragon-like beast to give pursuit with a growl. Once all 6 Constructicons made it out of the castle and were now in the courtyard of the floating station, Mixmaster gave his order. Form Devastator. Now. The second the Predacon had made it outside, the Constructicons had already combined into the massive green and purple machine that was known as Devastator, which seemed to tower over even the snarling Predacon. Get crushed. Devastator raised his foot to try and stomp on the Predacon, but the beast had spread out its wings to take to the air and avoid the stomp. An orange glow was seen in the Predacon's chest, which traveled up its throat into its mouth, right before it blasted a concentrated stream of fire at the Constructicon combiner. The second it made contact, the flames exploded with the force being enough to knock over the mighty Devastator. Back inside, while many of the Britannians remained protected inside their shields, they were all helpless to watch as Megatron easily snuffed out the remaining Seekers in the chamber with nothing more than precise shots from his cannon. Within minutes, only their armored leader was left as he and Megatron faced each other. With a furious growl, Starscream had stood up. "No matter, I've always wanted to beat the spark out of you with my own hands anyway." He charged and tried to rush Megatron, only for him to duck underneath the punch and sweep his feet to trip up the armored Starscream, using his own momentum against him to send him rolling over himself and on the ground. "The Apex armor is indeed an impressive tool, Starscream," Megatron told him, "but just like everything else you touch, it is nothing more than a useless trinket if you don't know how to properly use it." That only seemed to aggravate Starscream further as he stood up and attempted to charge his former leader once again. Back outside, the Predacon continued to fly around Devastator as the Combiner attempted to swing his massive arms to try and knock the beast down, but the Predacon proved too quick for him to catch and too strong as it flew in for a headbutt to Devastator's side and knocked him down to his knees. While he was down, the Predacon hovered above him and let loose another fire blast from its mouth to blast Devastator flat on its back. The Predacon then pinned him further to the ground and bit down on Devastator's neck area, but this wouldn't last long as Devastator was quick to grab the Predacon in the form of a bear hug as he stood back up. The Predacon roared and snarled as it struggled to escape Devastator's crushing grip. Time to get mulched. Devastator activated its vortex grinder built into its chest. The hole opened up and all the blades spun around as Devastator forced the Predacon's head into it to try and mulch it to pieces. However, Devastator did not expect the vortex grinder to get stalled inside. What? It was almost as if the armor of the Predacon was too strong to get crushed and grounded. Just then, a glow could be seen from outside of the hole that the Predacon's head was stuffed into. Even a brute like Devastator could figure out what was about to happen next. No. Disengage. Boom. Asterisk. A large explosion erupted from its back, courtesy of the fire that the Predacon unleashed into the vortex grinder. It was so powerful that it completely blew Devastator apart. Though Mixmaster, Hook, Long Haul, Bonecrusher, and Scrapper were alive, albeit severely injured, Scavenger was completely obliterated. What was left of him was now nothing more than burning scraps, literally stomped out by the Predacon as its yellow optics shined on the remaining Constructicons. "Run for it," Mixmaster ordered, but he was the next to go as the Predacon rushed him with an open jaw, scooping him up by his front half before biting down to eviscerate him. The other constrictions transformed and attempted to flee in whatever direction they could, but the Predacon made it a futile effort as it let loose another fire blast to send Scrapper up in flames. Hook was next as the Predacon rushed to swipe its claws and crush him in one strike. It then flew to intercept the fleeing Long Haul, who transformed to try and fight back with his own natural strength, grabbing onto the Predacon's face, but the beast hauled him up into the air and blasted him away with another fireball. All that's left was Bonecrusher as the Predacon charged the last of the Constructicons before swinging its massive tail to obliterate him in one strike. With all the Constructicons dead, and its mission accomplished, the Predacon raised its head to give a victorious roar. Meanwhile, inside, Schneisel could only watch in shock as he saw Starscream continued to try and failed to even land one solid blow on Megatron, even with the Apex armor. Megatron easily danced around all the blows that the traitor tried to strike with. Sloppy. Megatron lectured as he swerved around one punch. Followed by another punch that Megatron moved underneath to grab the arm and flipped him over to land on his back. Easily countered. Predictable. Just like you always have been. Starscream roared as he tried to charge Megatron and crush him with raw strength, but the Decepticon leader leapt over him and kicked him down while airborne to knock him to one of the shields that Guinevere and others were hiding inside, which he bounced off from before hitting the ground. You never learn, Starscream. No matter how much power you accumulate, it all falls apart at your arrogance. I've had enough of your lectures. Starscream exclaimed before throwing out a punch, one that actually landed usefully and sent Megatron flying to the wall. He pushed himself up as he found Starscream already up and above him before grabbing him and slamming him down on the ground. I've had enough of your abuse. He pounded his face in with his armored fist. I've had enough of you altogether. Another pound. have had enough of you, he shouted with every pound that would seem to render Megatron to scrap metal. Schneisel continued to watch, and this time, and for the longest time, he was hoping that this would work. Never once did he ever imagine he'd hoped an outcome would fall in his favor. Everything he did, he planned for with the utmost of planning and strategy which would lead to the desired outcome he envisioned, even if it was in the long run. But it seems that this may go in his favor after all. Starscream could pound Megatron into oblivion. But there was still the matter of this so-called Predacon. But perhaps Damocles itself could. Suddenly, the shield around himself and Kanan had deactivated, much to their shock. What? And it wasn't just his barrier. All of the barriers in the chamber that had protected the Britannian royal and nobles were shut down, leaving them all completely exposed, much to their terror. No, where are the shields? Anticlea exclaimed. Schneisel, what is happening? Guinevere screamed. I don't know, he couldn't understand how this was happening. This even drew the attention of Starscream, who stopped his assault on Megatron to gaze around in surprise as well. Thundercracker, Slipstream, Skybite, what is happening? Starscream tried to make contact with them. What's happening is that we're done with you. Thundercracker revealed as he, Knockout, Fracture, and Steeljaw had managed to secure the power core for Damocles, fusion cannons in one separate area of the station. Why you betray me? Starscream exclaimed over the comms. Oh please, any leader has to be an improvement over you. Slipstream scoffed as she, Shockwave, and Shin, once more piloting the Thanatos, had eliminated any remaining Seeker Vehicons that had attempted to flee from one of the docking ports on the station. I'm not one to stab people behind the back. Skybite added as he, Ravage, and Laserbeak guarded Soundwave, who was currently patched into Damocles systems via one of the monitors in the hallway, as it was he who deactivated the shields that had been protecting the Britannians. But that's all the more reason to see you and Schneisel removed from our ranks. Soundwave then worked his usual magic, his visor showing the situation currently taking place with Megatron and everyone else before activating a single yet larger dome barrier to encompass everyone inside. Starscream and all the Britannians were further shocked to see all of them trapped inside the large barrier, with Megatron himself still with them. He had stood up, and despite all the injuries he sustained from Starscream's beatdown, he still carried an evil smirk on his face. I've enjoyed deconstructing your little game Starscream, Schneisel, but this is where it ends. He took out a sealed container with a rusty brown vapor inside. What is that? Starscream questioned. A synthetic version of the Rust Plague, courtesy of Shockwave. Megatron answered. He only had the resources to manufacture this single sample. As much as I'd like to unleash it upon the Autobots and the Black Knights, I believe my Predacon will be more than enough for that. So, let us see how this affects the Apex armor as well as human flesh. He crushed the container in his hands, causing the vapor to explode in every direction, spreading everywhere. With the brown vapor moving in all directions, the Britannians all screamed as they tried to escape, only to run into the barrier that kept them trapped. Anticlea and Guinevere tried desperately to pound away and break through, but it had no effect. They could only watch in terror as the rusty vapor reached them. The second it made contact with their human skin, their fate was sealed. Their skin bubbled and melted away and, with their flesh and organs burning up from the airborne rust as their bones turned brittle and their bodies fell apart into mushy and rusted goo. This was happening to every human in the barrier as well. Schneisel watched in genuine horror as Kanan suffered a similar fate, watching the skull of his most devoted servant break apart into dust. He looked towards his own hands as he saw his skin begin to melt away too. He wanted to scream but his voice was already gone as his body was breaking down. No, is this it? Am I meant to die? Alone, but, I haven't done anything. Those were his last thoughts as the mighty Prince Schneisel was now nothing more than a pile of dust and rusted slime. And no. Starscream himself looked in just as much terror as he saw the Apex armor being rusted over. The Apex armor is impenetrable. It cannot. He tried to wipe off the rust, but it didn't do anything. All it will do is prolong your demise, Starscream. Megatron gloated despite his own body beginning to break apart from the synthetic plague. But look at yourself. Starscream exclaimed desperately. You'll die too. I already told you, Megatron sneered as his whole body was almost completely rusted over. Death no longer applies to me. Goodbye, Starscream. With that, his whole body was rusted from the inside out before it fell apart. Just like that, Starscream was all alone now. But not for long. He could see the most rusted parts of the Apex armor were beginning to beak off, letting the synthetic plague inside and reaching his own body. No, not like this. Please no. Starscream's body was already rusting, his lanky body much quicker than the bulky form of Megatron as the Apex armor continued to fall apart, further exposing him. I am Starscream. I cannot die like this. No, no, no. His screams would be the last sounds he would make as his body was rusted from the inside out and he too met his end. Moments later, Soundwave, Shockwave, Thundercracker, Steeljaw, Knockout, Fracture Slipstream, the Thanatos, and Skybite had all gathered together and waited outside the castle with the Predacon looming over them. Am I the only one who's nervous about this thing? Knockout asked, referring to the Predacon. Good, so it's not just me. Skybite added. No need for worry. The beast is completely under my control. Shockwave assured. Just this beast? Fracture questioned. Why not an army of Predacons? I only discovered the fossilized remains of this single Predacon on Cybertron. Shockwave explained. And even then, it took a while for me to effectively replicate its CNA to grow a suitable specimen. In addition, my focus has also been here on Earth with Megatron's personal project. And what might that project be? Steeljaw inquired. With so few of us left, it would make sense that we are all in the loop. In due time, Shockwave responded. What about the synthetic rust plague? How are you getting rid of that? Thundercracker questioned. Soundwave is currently using his spacebridge ability to transport the toxic air to the heart of the star at the center of this solar system to see to its complete obliteration. Shockwave responded. A shame. It could have been a useful weapon against our enemies. Shin said. As I've said before, my focus has been to the projects on Earth. Shockwave replied. And replicating the rust plague has been among my more challenging projects. I could only create that one sample. And it served its purpose. All eyes set on the still-alive Megatron as he stepped outside, without so much as a single injury or patch of rust anywhere. So, it's true then. Steeljaw commented. You really are immortal, now. Indeed. Megatron showed the code emblem on his hand. And this is only the first step. Despite Starscream and Schnizel's betrayal, they were able to learn the location of the enemy base. And now Damocles is under our control. All remaining Decepticon forces from New Count are being transported to the station as we speak. Thundercracker reported. Within the hour, we'll have an army ready to be deployed. Not to mention this big guy up here. Slipstream added, referring to the Predacon that gave a low growl. Megatron chuckled. Soon, the Autobots and their Black Knights will be no more, and I will finally have the key to my ultimate victory. Horai Island, Medical Bay. Ratchet and Perceptor continued to work on the gravely injured Optimus, doing everything they can to keep him alive. Though Lloyd and Rakshata both left to meet with Lelouch and everyone else in talking about a way to take down Damocles, Nina and Cecile both stayed to help out however they could, and Fix-It had joined them as well. Ratchet, Perceptor got his attention. These readings, you know that. Perceptor don't, we can't give up yet. Ratchet stated as his metallic fists clenched in frustration. There has to be another way. Before anyone else could respond, the sound of an incoming vehicle got their attention. This was the vehicle mode of Smokescreen, who had his doors open as Shirley, Millie, Rivals, and Sarah all stepped out before Smokescreen transformed. What are all of you doing here? Nina asked. We had to see this for ourselves. Millie said as she and everyone else gazed upon Optimus fall in unresponsive form for the first time. Oh my god. Rivals's face paled while Shirley covered her mouth with both her hands. To see someone they admire so much in such a state was nothing short of heart-wrenching for them. Sarah couldn't even describe what she was feeling right now. She remembered seeing this metal giant for the first time with her new master, and despite such an imposing figure, the words of those who were kind to her said that this metallic being was among the most kind that she'd ever meet. And something deep inside her heart believed them. But now, seeing this giant in a state that appeared as if he were knocking on death's door, Before she even realized it, tears flowed from her eyes automatically, much to her own confusion as she touched her face and looked to her own tears in surprise. "What's the damage?" Smokescreen asked. "We've done all we could," Cecile explained. "We sealed up as much of his wounds and have been trying to give him a steady dose of energon, but the trauma done to all his internal systems is beyond any hope of repair," Fix-It said. "But we saw you guys do amazing things," Shirley exclaimed. "You're all geniuses. Having the most intelligent mind doesn't automatically give you the answer to every problem," Perceptor said. "And sometimes, there isn't an answer. He can't die though, he's Optimus Prime for crying out loud," Rivals stated. "Come on Ratchet, you gotta have some kind of special thing to at least patch him up, right? If I had, don't you think I would have used it?" Ratchet shouted, surprising everyone present. "You think this is easy for me? I've known him far longer than any of you have. Long before he was even a Prime, before even the war. I would give anything to see my oldest friend walk again right now. But, I just don't." Once again, the mood turned sorrowful as Ratchet turned away with a frustrated and devastated look on his face, earning expressions of sympathy and pity from all those present. While many of them knew Optimus Prime for the hero that he was, Ratchet was among the few that knew him before he was even Optimus Prime. He was a friend. Excuse me. Sarah slowly and nervously raised her hand to get everyone's attention. I might have an idea, if you want." "What is it, Sarah?" Millie asked in a mellow tone, not wanting to shoot her down and hurt her feelings, so she was humoring her, despite thinking what ideas she might have may not work. "Well, it's just, I heard a few times about something called a forge, one that is supposed to have magic powers," Sarah explained. "I don't know all that much about it, and I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But I heard that it could fix anything and make it better, so could it do the same for him?" She gestured to Optimus. "The Forge of Solus Prime, but," Smokescreen thought for a minute. "Wait, if he had it, he could fix himself up no problem. Power of the Primes." An excited smile formed on his face. "Could that work?" Rivals asked just as excitedly. "Well, the Forge was able to upgrade many of our nightmares and even improve our weaponry. I don't see any reason why it couldn't be applied here," Fix-It said, becoming just as hopeful as everyone. "Sarah." Shirley quickly ran up to the amnesic girl in a hug, much to her surprise. "You're a genius. I could kiss you." Kiss me?" Sarah asked in confusion and her cheeks turning pink. "Hey, why didn't we think about that before?" Millie questioned happily. "Let's do it. I'll retrieve the forge." Perceptor had already transformed and drove away. "Looks like the big guys still got a chance." Cecile smiled. Ratchet too smiled, very happy at the thought of his friend being able to pull through this. But at the same time, he mentally kicked himself for not thinking about it sooner. How could he have overlooked the Forge of Solus Prime? One of the relics of the original 13. We're all distraught here, Nina spoke to him, getting his attention as she placed her hand on his leg in comfort. "Don't blame yourself, especially since it's your oldest friend," she said with an assuring smile. It was almost as if the girl could read his mind. But this was enough for Ratchet to smile back in appreciation. Suddenly, a groan had drawn them all to their fallen leader and friend. Optimus. Optics slowly opened as he seemed to regain consciousness. Optimus. Ratchet was the first to be by his side with everyone else moving around him. "Please, save your strength. You're going to be okay, Optimus," Shirley assured, standing by his face. "Preceptor's going to get the forge so we can fix you up. You'll be back on your feet in no time." Lelouch, he muttered. "Where is Lelouch?" "He's with everyone else, trying to make a plan to take down Damocles. The Khan's newest weapon," Millie explained. Call him, here," Optimus requested weakly. "Why? Hey, it's gonna be okay," Rivals said. "You don't have to. Please, bring him, here," Optimus requested once more. Everyone looked towards each other in confusion, but Smokescreen was the first to get up straight. "I'll go get him, hang tight." He transformed and drove away, leaving everyone else to keep the weakened and injured Optimus company. Meanwhile, the group consisting of Zero, Nunnally, Bumblebee, Alita, Colin, RC, Suzaku, Bulkhead, Rai, Geass, Ultra Magnus, Cornelia, Euphemia, Toto, Ogi, Lloyd, and Rakshata had met up on the bridge of the Ark with the Viacon now named Steve as he explained everything he knew about the Damocles station with a large hologram of it being present for all to see. Odysseus, Karini, and Layla were escorted to a different room to be isolated and monitored for a time. Alright, Damocles is basically a flying fortress. Steve explained. The Constructicons lead the project. I was brought in for extra labor. I don't know everything about it, but I do know one thing. It's not your typical fortress. What does that mean? Bumblebee questioned. For one thing, it has 3 different power cores. Steve said. 3 cores. RC wondered aloud as everyone looked towards one another. Why 3? One to keep it airborne, one to power the shield generator, and the other for the fusion cannons. Steve answered. That does seem pretty clever. Rakshata commented. One would do best not to keep all their eggs in one basket. Lloyd added. Do you know where these power cores are? Ultra Magnus asked the defected Viacon. No, but I do know that the shields are completely impenetrable, and there's a special feature that keeps the enemy from ground bridging inside. Steve replied. Bet the Star Saber could cut right through it. Rai said darkly. But Optimus, he's the only one that can wield it, and he's not in fighting condition right now. Bulkhead commented with remorse. But we do have a similar weapon. One that was wielded by someone who clearly isn't a prime. Cornelia reminded. The Dark Star Saber is not an option. Zero said immediately. I agree that is powerful, but given that it was forged by Megatron, I wouldn't put it past him to at least adapt a similar feature from the original sword so that only he could wield it and nobody else. Do you know that for certain? Toto asked. Even if that weren't the case, it's made from raw dark energon, and we've all seen how dangerous that is. Zero reminded. It raised an army of robot zombies. Lloyd said bluntly. Even in the most desperate of situations, I will never use that weapon. I would rather die than wield it. Zero said with every bit of seriousness. I have to agree with Zero. Suzaku spoke up. The Dark Star Saber is too much of a wild card. Best we keep it locked away until we figure out a way to destroy it. I think we should focus more of our attention on destroying that thing first. Colin pointed to the Damocles hologram once again. Is there a moment where the shields are deactivated? They have to come down at some point. Ultra Magnus asked. Not that I know of. Steve shook his head. What about those big guns? Ogi asked. I mean, they obviously gotta be shielded cause they're that thing's primary weapon, right? But the shield would have to go down so it could fire, or else it would just reflect back at it or something. At least it would have to be down around the cannons at that time. Euphemia followed along. But I'm willing to wager the shield will come back up as soon as it's done firing. Kagaya put in. What about the phase shifter? Nunnally spoke up. Lloyd, Rakshata, you two have been studying it ever since we brought it back. It can phase through energon blasts, right? Couldn't it do the same for those fusion blasts? The two scientists shared thoughtful expressions with one another. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. Lloyd said. But what exactly are you implying, Nunnally? Rakshata asked. We have one of our flyers use the phase shifter to fly directly into the blast as it fires and into the station, bypassing the shield entirely. Nunnally revealed, causing everyone to look in surprise. Even Lelouch didn't expect his sister to come up with a plan like that. Couldn't we go a safer route and just use the shifter to phase through the shields? Rai asked. Since Schneisel helped to build it, and those shields can counter ground bridges, I wouldn't be surprised if he found a way to counter the phase shifter. Nunnally replied. That would sound like a Schneisel move. Cornelia agreed. But if it works, and someone is able to get inside with the phase shifter, they'd be able literally go anywhere they want, and nobody could stop them. Bumblebee said. They could even find the power cores and disable them. At least if they take out the shields, we'd be able to mount a full assault and blow it out of the sky. Bulkhead stated. Why not the guns? Colin asked. If the shields are down, we can attack and disable the guns from the outside. RC replied. But if they do manage to find the power core for the cannons, they should take it out. Something that big and powerful has gotta have a time to cool off, though. Bumblebee said before looking to Steve. They can't fire rapidly, can they? No, the former Viacon answered. Even if it's just one cannon, firing off that much power would cause the core to overheat and they would need time to cool down. I'd expect maybe an hour, at most. Only an hour? Ogi questioned before a smirk fell on his face. I think we can make that work. He looked towards Zero. Windblade would be our fastest flyer. The Black Knight leader said. We'll give her the phase shifter and she'll enter Damocles to disable the shields, maybe the other 2 cores if she gets the chance, but the shields are top priority. The rest of us will attack Damocles and draw out as many of the enemy forces as we can and give Windblade more time. Sounds like a plan. Toto agreed as everyone was already on board. Steve. Zero got the former Viekan's attention. Thank you for this. You may have just saved a whole lot of lives. He nodded in return. A feeling of joy came to him as he, probably for the first time in a long time, got some gratitude. I'm just glad I'm finally doing something right for a change. Everyone, we got a problem. Tai suddenly appeared in front of them in her hologram form. Satellite surveillance shows that Damocles is on its way toward Horai Island. They found us. Yuffie exclaimed in surprise. Of course, they did. Bumblebee scowled. We're also getting hailed. Somebody is calling for us. For you, Zero. Tai said to the young revolutionary, whose expression hardened underneath his mask as he had a good idea who it was. Zero had walked to the center of the catwalk that was in front of the main screen before giving the order. Bring him up. The central monitor activated, revealing the smirking face of their enemy, earning glares and scowls from everybody present. None of them said a word however, this was only between their enemy and their leader. Hello, Lelouch. Megatron greeted, surprised to see me. No. Zero replied. I take it Schneisel and Starscream are dead. I'm certain you would have loved to end their lives with your own hands, but I hope you take solace in the fact that their demise was excruciating. Megatron sneered. Tell me, where is Optimus? Don't tell me that the last of the Primes has finally met his end. It would be such an unemotional demise. You should be more concerned with your own well-being. Zero stated. Should I? Megatron queried as he showed the code emblem on his palm. I take it you recognize this, do you not? You've stolen VV's code. Zero wasn't surprised. They all suspected this. I'm immortal now, my boy. I cannot die, no matter what weapons you've acquired or built. Megatron continued. But the same cannot be said for you, or all your precious friends. I'll get to the point. I know exactly where you're hiding, and Damocles is now under my control. You have a choice. Surrender, and your comrades will live. Or you can fight, in which case all of you will die. We both know that's not true. Zero reached for his mask and pulled it off, revealing the determined face of Lelouch v Britannia as he glared Megatron down. Even if we accepted, you would kill everyone anyway. We will fight, and you will lose, immortality or not. I will see that Damocles burns, and that you will never harm anyone again. So come, Megatron. Come and face us. We'll be waiting. Megatron's smirk only grew. Spoken like a true leader. I will see you soon. The transmission cut off, leaving Lelouch and everyone else as he turned to face all his friends, family, and allies, human and Autobot alike. He could see in each of their eyes that they would stand and fight beside him no matter what. But there was still something he had to do. Tai, I want you to transmit to every communications device on Horai Island. I wish to address the troops. All of them. I'm on it. The holographic girl nodded. Tamaki leaned against a nearby wall when he felt his own personal communications device turn on. He took it out and was surprised to see the image of Lelouch, clad in his Zero outfit, except without his mask. And it wasn't just with Tamaki. Nearly every person on Horai Island, be they part of the Black Knight's military, or someone working in medical or maintenance, as well as every Autobot was now drawn towards the image of the unmasked Zero, which was revealed to be a video as he soon spoke. I suppose I should start. He began. For those who don't know, my name is Lelouch v Britannia. I was once a prince of the Britannian Empire before my sister, Nunnally, and I were exiled following an assassination attempt on our mother. We were sent to Japan initially as bargaining tools, before being outright discarded when Japan was invaded, and its fall soon after. Much like the Autobots, my sister and I lived in hiding. I used to think the world couldn't change, no matter how hard people tried. Or rather, the world couldn't change because nobody was willing to step forward and help it to change, whether they were afraid of the corrupt in power, or they were complacent with it. But I was wrong. And that's why I'm here now. I am, Zero. Layla looked with shaky eyes as she, Akito, Sideswipe, Ryo, Strongarm, Ayano, Grindcore, Yukia, Gino, and Claus all watched. He's revealing his identity to everyone, that's quite the risk. Yukia commented. You can always count on that guy being as dramatic as possible. Claus smirked. He knows what he's doing. Sideswipe said. Let's see where this goes. Akito and Layla looked to one another with concern before the former smiled in assurance, having a good idea what was to follow, causing her to smile back. Initially, I became Zero for the sake of revenge. To get back at Britannia for all they've done. But, I met Optimus Prime, and all the other Autobots, and they showed me that this isn't about revenge. It's not even about me. It's about you. All of you. Humanity on Earth. It's about creating a future better than the world we had in the past. We've been consumed by our petty differences for too long, and perhaps we may still be even after this war ends, corruption may return. But, I firmly believe that wherever there is corruption and persecution, there will be justice and courage to rise and meet it. And in the end, justice will be what prevails. Maribel and the remainder of the Crimson Knights and Wreckers watched as well, along with the unmasked Oegros, Orpheus, and Nonette. The former princess found herself drawn to her half-brother's speech, particularly the part about justice. She remembered how she felt that she was a force for justice against terrorism for the sake of Britannia. But now, she was looking at the true face of justice, one who would fight for the world. Her pride quickly grew, as did that of Orpheus, Uldren, and everyone else around them. Even Wheeljack gave his usual half-smirk as he nodded with approval. We have all suffered loss throughout this war. We have lost our homes. We have lost our friends, family, and loved ones. But despite that loss, we are not beaten. We have lost many in our recent battle, but the fight still wages on. For hope is not lost. Do you know why? Because you are here. We are all still here. And so long as even one of us still draws breath, this revolution continues. We have not lost. Guilford, Chigusa, Jetfire, and Diethard all watched as well, paying attention to every word. Grimlock couldn't help but look impressed as he, Alice, Misty, Dalk, Sancha, and Lucretia all watched. Kids got guts. Grimlock commented. You have one hell of a brother, Nunnally. Alice thought with a smile. Even Chiba, as she stood alongside Drift, Windblade, Safeguard, Jetstorm, Shink, Joe, and Tianzi, cried as her heart went out to the man who would stand to fight and avenge all her fallen comrades. Shink felt his hand being squeezed and looked down to see Tianzi looking up to him with a smile, as did he. Megatron is on his way here now, with a weapon that may seem impossible to overcome. But the UFN is still looking to us. To the Black Knights and the Autobots to lead the people of their countries out of the darkness. So, what will they see when they turn to us? Will they see rabble who run and hide? No, they will see free men, free women, and free bots. They will see the face of freedom itself. And what the enemy will see is our swords drawn. They will hear our guns blazing as we blow them out of the sky and show every single one of them what we can do. We will declare to them in one unified voice that we will not go quietly into the night. This is our world. We will not let them have it without a fight. Everyone on Horai Island, every Autobot, every human, they all found themselves standing and drawn more to this speech. Even Odysseus, Karini, and Layla watched it from their own personal quarters. The words this man spoke to them reached all of them at the very core of their being. They soon felt their spirits rise and their inner strengths increase tenfold. They felt that they could do anything. I know I'm asking a lot. The price of freedom is high, but it's a price I'm willing to pay for all of you. I will fight alongside you at the front as I've always have. We will face the demons at our doorstep together. We will look evil dead in the face and say, no more. Today, we stand as one. Today, we fight as one. He raised his fist high into the air. Till all are one. Damn right, buddy. Tamaki muttered as he stood up and walked out into the middle of a crowd. Till all are one. He raised his own fist high and was followed by everyone else on the island as they all shouted individually, then in groups, and then all in unison together as it echoed throughout the entire island. Till all are one. 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 It was done. TAI had ended the transmission as Lelouch faced all the Autobots and Black Knights on the bridge along with him as they stared for a minute. The first one to smile was Colin before she clapped, followed by Nunnally, Bumblebee, Suzaku, and everyone else. Even the likes of Ultra Magnus gave a nod and a smile before he clapped as well. Not bad, Zero. Bumblebee smiled. Even Steve couldn't help but look at him in awe. Is he always this inspiring? He asked Bulkhead. You have no idea. The big green Autobot replied with a smile. The moment was interrupted as Smokescreen's vehicle mode came in before he transformed and joined everyone. Hey, sorry to interrupt but, Optimus is awake. That alone got all their attention as Smokescreen looked towards Lelouch. And he wants to see you. While everyone else prepared for the battle to come, Lelouch, Nunnally, and Smokescreen arrived at the medical bay in record time, with Ratchet making the necessary preparations as Fix-It, Nina, and Cecile helped him in any way they could. Shirley, Millie, Rivals, and Sarah were all present as well as Lelouch and Nunnally stepped out. What's going on? Lelouch asked. We figured out how to fix Optimus. We'll use the Forge, Shirley answered, much to Lelouch's and Nunnally's surprise. Really? Nunnally asked with hope evident in her voice. Yeah, once he has, he'll back in fighting shape in no time. Rivals added. He's no shape to use it though. Lelouch stated. He doesn't really have to pound anything though. Millie explained. Ratchet, explain. The Forge of Solus Prime is a conduit for the energy that is used to repair and upgrade any raw material it makes contact with. Ratchet explained. All Optimus has to do is hold it, and he can channel that energy into himself. It's all so amazing. Cecile smiled as they made the final preparations. All this ancient Cybertronian technology, it's practically magic. In a sense, it is. Fix-It said. The power of the original primes is considered mysticism even among modern Cybertronian principles. Perceptor should be here any minute with the Forge. Smokescreen added. In fact, it was all Chera's idea. She gestured to the still amnesiac immortal. Well, it was just a thought, think nothing of it. Sarah was caught off guard as Nunnally ran up to her in a hug. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Nunnally was already crying tears of joy. Sarah even felt a grasp on her shoulder and looked towards Lelouch, who said nothing, but the emotional smile he had on his face may as well have been worth 1,000 words of thanks. This only caused Sarah to smile with childlike innocence. Oh, and here he is now. Millie smiled as Perceptor arrived in vehicle mode with the Forge of Solus Prime in tow. He transformed and laid the hammer down. Is everything ready? We're ready. Ratchet confirmed as they heard Optimus groan. His optics were dim and fading, but it wouldn't be that way much longer. Lelouch. Optimus, he was already near his face. I'm here. We have the Forge, we'll have you fixed up in no time. Don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. Nunnally added as she walked up and placed her hand on Optimus' face with a smile. That is not why you were called here, Optimus stuttered, which caused everyone to look at one another in confusion, especially Lelouch. What? I don't understand. All of you, listen, the power of the Forge is not unlimited. The weakened Optimus revealed. Its energy has already begun to ebb. It's running low on power. Is that even possible? Cecile asked, mostly to Ratchet. Well, mystic or not, energy has to come from somewhere. It would make sense. The Autobot medic seemed to understand. Well, let's just get it recharged. Rivals suggested. Can't we plug it in somewhere? None of the technology we have at our disposal would be adequate enough. Perceptor said. Is there anything we can do about that? Nina asked Fix-It. I'm sorry, but I don't think any of us are well versed in the knowledge of the ancients. The Mini-Con said. So, what if it's running a little low? Smokescreen questioned. All we need is enough juice to get Optimus back into fighting shape. No, Optimus muttered. Whatever power remains must be used to repair the core to Cybertron and restore our home. But that would mean, Nunnally's hope slowly faded as she and everyone else knew what that meant. She looked towards her brother and saw his eyes widen in fear. What about you, though? Shirley questioned. You need help, Optimus. The fate of all our kind is more vital than any one of us, including me. He weakly said. Just like that, any kind of hope they had was replaced with dread and fear. While it would make sense for Optimus to want to use the Forge to fix Cybertron's core, even if it was low on power, it would help immensely and possibly get the planet closer to being restored. But, that would come at the cost of Optimus himself, and that was something none of them wanted. No, Lelouch stated. That can't happen. We can't do that, Optimus. Lelouch is correct. Ratchet kneeled to his friend's level. You of all people have to understand that the Forge can only be used by a Prime. And you are the last. There is nobody else who can use the Forge but you. There will be a new Prime. Lelouch shook his head, trying to shake off any sense of doubt or negativity that was draining his hope. We don't have time for this. Megatron is on his way here right now with a station armed with weapons that can destroy entire cities, and he means to kill every single one of us. We don't have to use all of the Forge's remaining power, just enough so that your life is no longer in danger. The rest of us can handle Megatron. Once that's done, and you're fully recovered, we can talk about fixing Cybertron's core. But first things first. He was about to give the command to Ratchet and the others and tell them to proceed, but Lelouch, Optimus spoke to him directly. The time, for a new leader, is upon us. In my spark, I know, without a shred of doubt, that leader, my successor, is the young man standing before me, right now. And this at the end of Season 2 Part 16 of this What If. Hope you guys like it. Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.